So I find the anti-immigration debate both morally reprehensible, but also economically illiterate.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at some of the people that are coming across in the boats are the most vulnerable people in the world. They've taken their families from their homes, war-torn homes, across in the hands of gangs, on rubber boats, where many of them lose their lives.
So what control should there be?
Let me just finish this. This is really important that we understand these are humans.
Well, we know that.
The debate too often dehumanizes these people. We need to understand it could be my son, it could be your son, it could be your daughter that could be going across the seas, and we treat them like numbers. These are people that deserve respect. That's why we need to discuss these people.
Yeah.
But there's also something inspirational about these people. That these people are incredibly talented. They've got great engineering. If you're going to take your family from one side of the world to the other, there's a bit of go about you, isn't there? These are the people we should be wanting to have in our country.
So why are they not coming to Scotland at the moment? That's Megan Gallagher's point.
Yeah, I know, but it's very small beer, isn't it? I mean, for goodness sake, we need to look at the big picture. Of course the SNP are terrible. Of course they've got terrible public services. Of course that's the reason. But the big picture here is how do we get the right people into our country to drive our economy? Because, let's say, for instance, the students we can get in our universities, they are some of the best in the world. They can drive the ingenuity of our universities. The people who pick berries on the fruit farms, they can come from all over the world to do that. It's some of the best produce, food and drink produce that we've got in this country. These people are a great talent, economically beneficial, but morally such a powerful case.
So obviously, I've obviously reacted to that video before last week, but my missus hadn't seen it. So I just want to ask you two very quick questions before we begin proceedings tonight. First and foremost, do you agree with the sentiment that people coming over illegally on boats have a bit of go about them and they're the type of people that we should be attracting to the country? And secondly, how do you feel about fruit pickers?
They definitely got a bit of go about them, but I don't know whether we want to be attracting more of them.
It's just fucking, oh my God.
And I think there's plenty of fruit to be picked in this country, but it should be our own folk that's picking it.
Yeah, just fucking honestly, the absolute soy that comes out of the Scottish political sphere from time to time. Obviously, he's not a member of the SNP. Might as well be, to be quite honest.
Alan Smith was sitting smiling away in the background.
He came away with a few, shall we say, god tier, memeable hot takes. But we're not going to dig up old ground in that regard. Nordic warrior, what like Gudgy? How do? So basically, it's Friday night. Me and the missus, as a means of like trying to stay away from the temptation of going to the pub and whatnots, which is kind of a regular occurrence for us, to be quite honest. Weatherspoons is usually our go-to to try and stay away from splurging some money. We thought, why not laugh at some cringe that's come out of the Scottish political scene the last week or so, you know? So Budgie Burger's in the chat as well. But obviously, as I said, I'm with my missus. Hi. Fancy seeing you here.
Hi.
Hi. You're
Fancy
back
that.
again. PB,
For my
Habibi.
sins. For my sins.
Oh, dearie me. Where to begin? I don't even know where to begin. I've got a few tabs open. I mean, there's nothing like seriously... there's no deep dives tonight. No. The S&P is always cancer, but, you know, it's not going to be anything too political heavy, you know. I'll save that for whenever Scott's Armour decides to make a fucking stream again, you know, with the Sunday with the Lads thing. Clive's kind of taking a bit of a hiatus in the online world, so I don't know when he'll be back. He's gone a bit dark. He's fine, by the way, for anybody that's curious, but he's just taking a bit of time away from the internet, which just leaves me and Scott's Armour, and Scott's Armour is about as reliable as fucking
Sky Internet.
Yeah, Sky Internet. Yeah, which leaves me. But the good thing about Clive being out of the picture, it means, quite frankly, I alone am the Scottish God online now. Clive has got, what, like nearly 10,000 subscribers? But he's got no videos now. I'm the God. It's me. You tune in to fucking hear me. No more Clive. It's me. Anywho, I love that. We were actually talking about this earlier on, and it was absolutely unrelated to the stream we've ended up doing. And it's like, it just goes to show how little they think of immigrants. Like, well, we want to open the borders and let everybody come in, pick on berries.
Picking dangleberries off all people's asses as well.
It's just mental, eh? Oh, who else is going to clean my car? You know, who else is going to clean my gutters? We need the Mexicans in here.
Who's going to serve us in Costa?
Exactly. It's like,
In fact,
fuck.
Yesterday, I was at McDonald's getting McFlurries for the kids, and all the guys that were driving the Just Eat or whatever it was were Asians. And I don't think they were native Asians.
Shock.
So they're being put to good use because no white person or native Scot could clearly fill the role of delivery driver.
Yeah. Pay fucking peanuts. Get redacted, as they say.
Same with all of these delivery and Just Eat people in Glasgow. You see them cycling about the city centre and bikes. Like,
it's even the same up here, to be honest. Most of the taxis fucking ranks now are filled to the brim with foreigners. All the like Deliveroo, Just Eat, etc. It's all foreigners. And I mean, these are the people that our government will sit there and just say so carte blanche. Oh, they're contributing. They're contributing to our economy. What do you mean you're contributing to our economy? They're delivering fucking chips, mate. Like, what? Oh yeah, I'm sure you could get Barry from the estate to do that if it wasn't for Tamwar. You know, I mean, they sort of blur the lines whenever they speak about immigration, and it's always the same shite. Like, oh, they contribute to our public services. But, okay, for every one doctor that you've got, how many people are working at fucking Tesco's or are delivering chips? All right, security is actually a really good one. I don't know if other people, whether they're listening right now. There's only 4 people at present listening. I did clock that there's a few other streams going on at the moment, so I'm not going to apologize for stream cucking. I'll do what the fuck I want. My view count showcases that I shouldn't be so cocky, but regardless, for anybody that listens at a later date or whatever, have you not noticed that like every supermarket you go into, there is brown and black, predominantly African security guards, and I've managed to clock what's on the back of their high-vis outfits that they've got on. They're all part of the same group called Amberstone. Now, I don't know if this group in particular, Amberstone, is deliberately or explicitly hiring people of an African persuasion, but legitimately, every shop that I have been in across the Highlands, and even as far down as where my missus is from, down in Paisley and whatnot, it's the same principle. It's always an African guy. I've been in Fort William. I've been in fucking Forres. I've been in Inverness, obviously. I've been in Nairn. I've been in Paisley, I've been in Glasgow, and it's always the same. And every single one of them has the same thing. It's Amberstone security. I swear to God, they must just be specifically hiring black people. Even in Wetherspoons, isn't that the same guys from Wetherspoons as well down in Paisley?
There's 2 black guys down there.
Fucking weird, eh?
The only place I've seen a white security guard is that creepy guy in Liddell.
No, there's one in the Inverness. There's one of the Tesco's in Inverness. There's a white guy, yeah. But every second day that he's not there, there's just this black guy that sits there all day.
There's a guy, I think it's Renfrew. He's not black. He's Asian. Must be a Sikh because he wears a turban. But
we call them BAMEs.
He's he was seeking employment.
All right, that's plenty. That's plenty. Out of you. Anyway. So we have Kate Forbes here. What was this? Only 3 white players in the start lineup. It's funny, just before we came live, I seen on Telegram, it was a picture of the French national team from, what was it? Can you remember the year? I think it was like the 1990s or something.
Did you send me it?
Yeah, I did. I sent it to you on Telegram. It was a picture of the French national team from the 1990s compared to it now. I mean, fucking hell. Let's see if I can get it up before we go any further. I suppose I could do that.
It's 94.
1994 versus now. pretty mental, in fairness.
There was 2 black guys in '94. One was a goalkeeper.
How times change. Well, we were very progressive.
No, there's one. No, is that 2 white guys? It's total demographic shift. There's 2 white guys there. It's
Jesus
exact
Christ, man.
inversion.
Jesus. Oh, Jesus Christ. Nah, I mean, in order to fucking share that, it would just complicate things. Regardless, fuck it.
Put it
Anyway.
on your Telegram channel.
Nah, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Some pizza. Anyway. Hello, by the way. Don't know if I've seen you before, but hi. Anywho, let's go. Let's get into it. Yes, Quinn.
Industry. So, I don't agree in any way that Scots are not contributing to our public finances. What they want to see is public finances that are adequate, that come from the UK government, and an end to 14 years of austerity. Where I would agree with you is that this is a change election. We want to see real change. And at the moment, Labour are proposing no change to immigration policy, no change to Brexit policy, and no change to austerity. That is not change. It's SNP MPs that will hold Labour to account when it comes to the next Parliament.
Before we get any further into this, I'm getting really annoyed with the rhetoric that's on display here. I want to set one thing for on record right off the bat. I am absolutely not convinced that the upcoming election really holds any relevancy in terms of change, so to speak, especially where the SNP are concerned. The SNP theoretically would be looking to try and gain grounds in the Scottish election as opposed to the upcoming general election. But I just find it sort of laughable. And the only reason that we're laughing at them, and we're going to talk a bit about some of the BS that they're coming out with as of late, it's not so much as, for scoring political points. It's more a case of the fact that so many people lap up their shite. That's the problem. But they sit there and they talk about how the Tories have destroyed X, Y, and Z, right? And this is while the SNP have had quite a substantial amount of seats within Westminster, courtesy of the previous general election. But yet they somehow think that if you vote for them this time around, when Labour get in inevitably, that will somehow be different. It doesn't make sense. If the Tories being in government allowed for them to destroy X, Y, and Z, then Labour being in government after the Tories, they will be able to continue to destroy X, Y, and Z. If the SNP weren't able to prevent the Tories from destroying the aforementioned X, Y, and Z, why the fuck would they be in any better position to prevent Labour from destroying the aforementioned X, Y, and Z? Just bullshit. But yet so many people will listen to this interview, as they will have listened to every other interview going, and they go, oh my God, I can't wait to vote for SNP. I love them so much. I mean, really? Fucking really? Oh, they're going to hold Labour to account, are they? Oh, because they did such a grand job holding the Tories to account, didn't they? Oh yeah, sitting in Westminster, sorry, when they can be ours turning up to read scripts.
They've got expenses to claim at Westminster. Oh, yeah. That's their party is going to go to the wall if they lose because they're losing a shit ton of expenses.
Yeah.
With each person who doesn't get voted back in, because they get I think the top 5 or the top 10 earners were SNP.
I think
MPs.
If they lose half of their seats, then they could end up losing the equivalent overall expenses and whatnot. I think it's from memory, it's about £1 million, £2 million annually overall, or worse that fit or numeracy to that.
They do get a certain amount of money, but then they're all claiming about $250,000 each on expenses.
It's just, I mean,
Mary Black was one of the highest claimants.
Aye, but even when you think of how many of these individuals are standing down, they're not actually running again in this election. Mary Black being one of them. She's not standing again. A lot of them are doing that. You have to wonder why.
She's made her money.
Yeah, you could argue that, of course. I don't know. I do have a really bad feeling about the longevity, politically speaking, and that is the fact that the Labour Party are obviously going to win this election. There's no fucking point pretending otherwise, okay? There's no point pretending that Nigel Farage is going to save the day and whatnot. The Labour Party are going to win. But my concern is more long-term in the sense of Labour is obviously a cancer, as are the Tories. But the problem is that we have 2 years from when the Labour Party get in until the Scottish general election. So if the Labour Party start to unveil how canty, for lack of a better term, that they are early on, they're going to start to hemorrhage support, which will in turn bolster the SNP's political narrative going forward when it comes to the Scottish general election. So any seats that the SNP may lose in this election coming up, which I think they're going to lose some, I don't think they're going to get completely butchered, but I do think they're going to lose some seats. But I think that there's a potential for them to be able to claw them back if, I'll get to that, if the Labour Party show themselves up to be the shower of shite that we all know that they are, if that makes sense.
I think if I was to predict, I'd say SNP will probably lose about a third of their seats.
Yeah.
I think that's a conservative number that I think they fucked enough people off in enough locations that they will lose a fair amount of seats. However, as you said, when there's no alternative and they're only running against Labour, and especially in Scotland where people traditionally don't vote Tory anyway,
Not anymore, no.
in great numbers, like there only really is SNP and Labour.
Yeah.
And the only reason that SNP have got the hold that they've got now is because Labour shat the bed a long time ago and they've not recouped.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, like, so for anybody that's like going to get really excited about the possibility of the SNP losing seats and thinking this is the be all and end all, just be very aware of the fact that it's only a few years until the Scottish election. Oh, that's what my concern is in that regard. But anyway, let's get back to this trad and base Christian.
Entry term.
But Kate Forbes, you're not changing your tune on independence, and you're suggesting that if the SNP were to get a majority in Westminster, then that gives you the right to call a referendum. Does that also mean, therefore, if you don't have a majority, which the polls are suggesting you will not, that is the end of the independence debate as far as the SNP are concerned? Because if you're going to respect it as a democracy, well, if you have a majority, you have that right. But if you don't have a majority, you no longer have that right.
Well, let's make a few things clear, because you started this interview talking about polls, and you will see from the polls that support for independence has remained relatively rock solid over the last year and a half, even whilst the SNP has been going through some challenges. Now, in an election, surely people have the opportunity to give democratic effect to their preferences. And that's what we've set out in our manifesto. The SNP stands for Scottish independence. We advocate for Scottish independence. That won't be an exclusive for your viewers. And in this election, there's an opportunity for those who support independence to express their wish.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting, I understand that. But what I'm suggesting is if you don't get the majority, if it's a democratic situation as you describe, if you don't get the majority, therefore, have the people decided, have the people voted that they no longer want a referendum?
Well, it goes hand in hand with the democratic mandate that we have right now. So in the last Scottish Parliament elections, 2021, we elect.
Are you having trouble trying to keep up with your professor?
I have
You've got to
fucking
try
ad
Otter.
blocker.
Here's how it
How's
works.
that happened?
Let's say
What the fuck?
to the majority of seats in that parliament of people that support independence. So there is a democratic mandate right now. We say in this election that there's an opportunity again to put your preferences clearly at the heart of decision making in Westminster. But the bottom line is that SNP will always put Scotland's interests first. It's in our DNA. So whether that is more
In our
funding for
DNA. It's in our DNA, apparently. Huh.
Is this like the new Scots DNA as well as like the originals?
Yeah. I just want to like share this. I mean, I love doing this because so many of like the total full-on culty members, like they just completely disregard these facts, right? So they talk about democracy. They talk about it's in their DNA to stand up for Scotland. And then they mention independence over and over and over and over again. Angus Robertson. He's not the only one to say this, by the way. independent Scotland would rejoin the European Union without a referendum. Okay, Nicola Sturgeon said the same fucking thing a few years prior. Nicola Sturgeon does not intend to hold referendum on EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. Okay, putting Scotland's interests first. Independence, independence, independence. It's not independence, is it? It's not independence, and it sure as fuck has got absolutely nothing to do with air quote unquote democracy, surely.
Democracy's taken away the rights of the people who voted against the thing they didn't want.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they're literally just using independence as a mere stepping stone to leave one union in favour of another. And it's remarkable how every argument that they make against Westminster could be attributed, identically speaking, to the EU. You know, but I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir. She's preaching to the choir in that regard. But it's just the fact, this is what I'm trying to say. The media, they give them these softball questions, constantly independence, let these twats run their mouth. Oh, be careful, Scotland. Oh, it's in our DNA. The democracy. Anybody that doesn't want us to have a mandate is democracy denying, etc. How is this not denying democracy?
I remember Angus Robertson saying that just get rid of 50,000 old people and replace them with young voters, and you can get the result that you want.
Yeah, he basically said something to the effect of that
if enough old cunts die.
No, the vast majority of no voters were old and they're dying off. Well, that's a great thing to say, Angus, mate. You know what I mean? That's people's grandparents and whatnot. But that's actually a legitimate thing that even happened with the EU referendum. There's a lot of hate directed at elderly people, and it still exists today.
Ian McEwan, and I know there'll be a comment in the chat about this, Ian McEwan stood up and said that if they got rid of, was it 1 or 2 million old people, they could overturn the referendum. You can pull it up if you put in Ian McEwan.
I'm just trying to...
And the funny thing about that is his son worked for AstraZeneca, working the elderly.
Go on, sorry.
He worked sort of in vaccine trials. He was getting money from the main players, so it's funny that the guy who was coming out and saying this on stage, like it was reported in The Guardian. The Guardian did an article on it. He basically said, kill enough old people off and we can overturn Brexit.
Fucking mental. It's mental. I mean,
imagine having the balls to stand up and say that. You can't even say certain things in Scotland because it's now a hate crime, but you can turn around and say that you want to
elderly,
kill off old people who voted against things.
It's not only that, it was like the sort of shite that they attributed to the elderly as well. Oh, they're racist, they're outdated views.
Far right.
I mean, these are people who are like the last remnants of, dare I say, better generations. I mean, the generations that have preceded them are arguably a lost cause for more often than not. And these people come from a time where tradition was still to a certain extent held up in high regard. They paid their taxes. They worked from the fucking second they left school all the way until their pension age. They have deserved their retirement and whatnot. They come from a world that no longer exists, and they're persecuted, metaphorically speaking, for it, and denigrated by dickheads who want to rejoin the European Union so we can put pronouns in our bios and call ourselves a nationalist movement. I mean, fucking Jesus Christ.
The majority of people who vote tend to be older people. Maybe not elderly people, but young people don't tend to vote that much.
Yeah.
It's people who have seen a bit of life, who think that they can go to a ballot box, put a tick in a box and change. And they're basically just changing the puppets. They're enacting the wee stage-managed performance for the masses, but it's mainly older people who vote anyway. So for them to say they want to kill off older people, it's mainly older people who voted, and it's mainly older people who can be bothered to go and vote or take postal votes. Young people are too busy out either earning money or getting wasted, or they're just not interested.
Yeah.
My cousin's older than me. He's never voted.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that haven't voted, to be honest, around about my age.
It's something the youth are totally disinterested in politics. And
To be honest,
even
rightfully so,
and the
because the
ones
alternative is they get politicised and whatnot. Because especially when they're children, which you're starting to see in Scotland, for example, the politicisation of children. So by the time they leave fucking school,
they're activists.
they're completely politicised activists. As you say, they're either SNP supporters or they're Green members or whatever the case may be. You know, they go to school to learn algebra and geography, and they come out the other side of it, a Just Stop Oil campaign. Fuck. But again, kind of sort of going full circle to again, it's not so much to just pick apart the shit that politicians and their parties come out with. It's the fact that people in the country actually lap this nonsense up. Vote Scotland. Vote SNP, sorry, for Scotland to become an independent country. Right. So this is a narrative that they run with 24/7 and have been running with for years now. Independence. Oh, vote for us so we can become independent. Blah, blah, blah. But then they sort of, there's like in brackets, like read the small print type shite. In the EU. Therefore, no longer independent. Therefore, this is really about obtaining your independence from Westminster in order to rejoin, or I say rejoin, we were never a member of the EU anyway. It was the UK, but regardless, in order to try and get back into the EU. That is all they give a shit about. That's not independence. And I wouldn't have so much of a fucking problem, per se, if they were just honest about it. You know, call it what it is. But instead of that, they continue to use these words that have absolutely no relevancy to what they're actually trying to achieve, or the very bare minimum claim they're trying to achieve. And they in and of themselves aren't the problem, because to PBC's point there, you know, it's puppetry and whatnot, but it's the people that follow this shit. Go on to Twitter, go on to, or especially Facebook. That's even worse. SNP's Facebook and whatnot, or any SNP politician's Facebook. Oh my days! At least on Twitter, there's a bit of counterbalance. There'll be some people that are calling them out and calling them dickheads and whatnot. But on Facebook, it's just a cesspit of groveling, bootlicking BS. You know? And oh my God, I can't wait for us to be independent in the European Union. Like, no, you're not independent in the fucking EU. Like, it's, I can't believe I have to say shit like that. Yeah, I mean, I think that was not the article that I covered when we were at Loch Ness. I don't know.
Possibly.
It might have been. But yeah. So let's just come down here. I'm not going through the entirety of their manifesto, but I just want to show people this. So I believe people are crying out for principled leadership, which is prepared to argue for what it believes in. In this election and in this manifesto, that is what the SNP is offering. Is that right? Oh, yeah? Our key pledges. Delivering independence, right? Right? But look at this. You know, this should be tied right into the third paragraph. Delivering independence, rejoining the EU, therefore completely shrugging off your newly found independence. Any independence that you may have managed to find yourself in the event of winning your independence referendum from the Westminster no longer exists. This is the point. Just fucking run with that. What is this bullshit about independence? Stop calling yourself an independence movement, huh? It fucks me right off.
It's the only thing they've got to fucking lure people in. No, they're no intention of pursuing anything like independence, but it's the only hook they've got.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the people who actually vote for SNP for independence are old people who think they're going to get a free and deliver Scotland from the clutches of Westminster in their life, and they're quite happy to trade their grandkids' fucking futures for that last roll of the dice, when in this, 17 years the SNP's been in power in Scotland, they've done fuck all other than absolutely destroy all the public services, destroy the roads, they've sold us to globalists.
Yeah.
Everything that was Scottish is now anybody's. It's up for grabs for fucking any old nation can come here and claim to be Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
What even is Scotland for it to have a national party?
One more bit in here. I mean, there's a lot of shit in this about green policies and whatnot. You know, our Scottish Nationalist Party. But look at this shit here. We will champion our vision for an independent Scotland in the EU. Thus, no longer being independent in the event of rejoining the EU or getting into the EU.
They're not taking in... Right, they're selling independence, and they're also selling the anti-Brexit vote. They're not counting on people who, like me, voted for independence, but also voted to leave Brexit. And there was quite a lot of people who voted the same way I did in both of these referendums. And partly because I do believe that Scotland should have the right to make its own laws and whatever, and shouldn't have the interference of Westminster. But I don't believe that SNP are ever going to achieve that. I don't believe any of the parties that are in power right now could achieve that.
No.
And I don't think, with the way things are politically across the globe, it would be allowed, even if there were parties that were pursuing that. It couldn't. We're just an annex of the global agenda. We're the UK arm, and it doesn't matter who sits in Westminster or who sits in Holyrood. They're all pushing the same fucking buttons. They're all pursuing the exact same.
Exactly, like there's cross-party consensus on the main issues.
Climate, migration.
So basically, like, parties will argue the to and fro about, like,
how many migrants,
or how fast or how slow should we be importing or deporting migrants. But there is still a cross-party consensus that we have to accept migrants. Same principle applies for climate change, for example. Cross-party consensus that my man-made climate change is a real thing. There's a climate emergency because the United Nations have said so. And as a result, we all agree, or they all agree even, that this is a real threat. But there's then a debate as to how fast or how slow, or what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing in order to achieve net zero. So there's this consensus that net zero is something that we should be all striving for. And the list is endless in regards to these sort of issues that sort of supersede the sort of mainstream theatre. And that's I think that's more to your point, though. So in that regard, it doesn't really fucking matter who you vote for. Now, don't get it twisted. If you're one of these people that wants to go out and vote, if you think that you can encourage other people to vote, and you think that there's a fucking route, pursue it if you wish. But I'm just personally of the belief that it just doesn't really fucking matter at this point. They're all the same. And I had this attitude years before I ever even started on YouTube. Even when I was like a child, or I say a child, like when I was like early teens, I had that attitude. Didn't matter who you vote for. They're all the fucking same. And as I've got a bit older and, dare I say, a bit wiser, I would safely say that, like, anybody who was genuinely sincere will never be in a position where they're able to actually initiate legitimate proper change, because the system would fucking clamp down on them well before the opportunity ever was presented.
Change isn't allowed to occur organically.
No.
Change only happens when it's being pushed.
Yeah. What's this, by the way? No one is mentioning drops in Tory support due to thousands of elderly during lockdown as a factor for Labour and Farage looking good. To be fair, mate, that's probably a good point to make there, in regards to some of the Tories' voter base, because, I mean, I haven't seen statistics and percentage points in order to sort of ascertain how many people, on average, vote for the Tory, or the sort of age demographics, but I would go out on a limb and say that a good portion of them are probably elderly.
Look at that quote there and tell me if you could get away with saying that.
Well, I'll fucking type it in on here, eh? What is it?
I'll tell you the article.
Deaths of elderly. I'll come back to your comment in a second, bud. But this is Brexit voters.
Just put Ian McEwen.
Ian McEwen.
And he stood on a stage and delivered this.
This one there.
Aye.
Okay, let's have a look. See. Just hide that a second. Your man's also commented about UNN, but I've not really looked at it properly yet. Share screen.
Yeah, he knows all about Ian McEwen.
Oh, is he somebody from UNN, is he? All right. Oh my God. Death of elderly Brexit voters could change second EU vote result, Ian McEwen claims.
Down, you'll see the comment that he made. This bit here.
By 2019, the country could be in a receptive mood. 2.5 million over 18-year-olds, freshly franchised and mostly Remainers, with 1.5 million oldsters, mostly Brexiteers, freshly in their graves. That is just so similar to Angus Robertson's quotation which I'm going to just pull up just for counterbalance, so to speak. 2 seconds. Angus.
I think it was
Robertson,
50,000 in his case.
Independent voters die, something like that. Here's it. Yeah, it's just fucking mental, really, that people would even have the absolute temerity to say something like this. You know what I mean?
And then lo and behold, everybody what happened during the last 4 years.
Yeah, I know.
Elderly people were the ones that decided to trust the government.
Yeah. Angus Robertson has been blasted for disgraceful comments about elderly no voters dying and being replaced by young indie supporters. Recent polls have shown more Scots back independence, with Nicola Thinlip saying Brexit immeasurably strengthens the case for Scotland.
When
Blah
did
blah
he say
blah.
this?
Was in 2020.
So that other one was 2017.
Yeah. Is this it here, though? Writing in the National, he said, since 2014, opinions have clearly not been static, and polls have shown a gradual rise in support for independence, aka in the European Union, therefore not independent. It's just fucking ridiculous. This could be in significant part because of the underlying change in the electorate, with roughly 55,000 predominantly yes supporting 16-year-olds joining the electorate and 55,000 predominantly no supporting voters passing away every year. Since 2014, this has added around 33,000 voters to the electorate, with a likely net gain of over 100,000 for independents. I mean, fucking Jesus Christ. I mean, there's so much to unpack from that, apart from the egregious attitude
Also,
towards elderly people. But
also
again,
shows you that they are confident that the young are going to vote in their favour because
because they're products of their environment. Yeah, absolutely products of their environment. So anyway, where did that guy's comment go? So yeah, I do think that that's most likely a factor. And there's another thing as well, I would say, for some of the elderly people that are out there as well, I have a hard time believing that, and I can't speak for them, obviously. There will be some that would, hold their nose and whatnot, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, like, somebody in their like late 70s or early 80s or whatever, they're not, even if they're a Tory, they're not going to vote for Rishi Sunak. They're fucking not. And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm not saying I'm one of these people because I'm clearly not their age, is because he's Indian. Like, they're just not going to do it. Nobody voted for Rishi Sunak apart from Tory members, so to speak. Like, he wasn't. He wasn't. Jesus, he wasn't like voted in via an election, was he? I just have a hard time believing that 79-year-old Brenda is going to vote for an Indian man. I'm sorry. They come from a different time period. So there's that aspect of it as well. I could be wrong in that. I mean, maybe that's speculative, but I just personally think that that's potentially a factor as well.
The only thing that the Tories have got against the other parties, whether it's here or down south, is that they, on the face of it, have appeared to roll back a lot of the LGBT gender type of things. They've pushed back up here, but they have in England. They sort of, I think they pushed back the education because they were trying to roll all that same crap that's in the Scottish package into the English schools, and they put a halt on it. So they have managed to claw back a bit of support, I would imagine, mainly from women. I would say from not like mothers who are aware of what's going on and they're afraid, but they've lost support from people who would have voted for them over the way that all the lockdown stuff was.
You kind of have to feel to a certain extent for, and by the way, I'm not a Tory, but you kind of have to feel to a certain extent a semblance of sympathy for like the Scottish Tories that are in the Scottish Parliament, only on the sort of pretext that like the Tory party in Westminster are a shower of absolute shite. And as a result, by extension, they're tarred with that same brush. So even though they've got absolutely no power whatsoever in Scotland, it doesn't matter what they say. Like the odd time that one of them's like appeared in like a debate during this like election cycle and whatnot, and it's just they're trying to speak, even if they're trying to speak a semblance of sense and sanity, it just doesn't matter. Because you're tied and associated with a shower of shite. It's like, just give up, mate. I don't even know why you would bother turning up, in all honesty. But before you fuck off, wherever you're going there, what's this? This is probably more directed at you, to be honest, because you know this person in the chat. I have no idea what he's talking about. This one here.
What was the comment?
Take this. It's no.
Yeah, he
What's he talking about?
He's talking about the Ian McEwan thing
Oh.
because he got banned from UNN because he used to constantly comment about Ian McEwan. And I looked into it and it was right what he was saying. Like,
Well, that guy.
Aye.
No.
Stu.
I don't know who he is.
He's well known in UNN circles.
Okay.
He'd get a temporary reprieve and then David would like ban him again because he'd type in caps locks, which it's a story for another day. But aye, like what he's talking about. Anytime there was like a doctor on the show or whatever, he would ask like why this guy's come out and made this comment about killing off old people. And it just so happens that when you look into it, his son works in virology and he worked for the people who were manufacturing some certain new product that a lot of old people happen to go and get.
Conspiratorial.
Aye. So, and a lot of his funding for his projects came from these avenues.
UNN. Sorry, which one? Fuck off. UNN discourages voting whilst S&P have battalions of Islam like block voters lined up. See, I mean, obviously, I said earlier on, well, I gave my 2 cents when it comes to voting. Like, whether or not I vote's not really going to make a fucking difference. I'm not really in a position to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, but I just personally feel that, like, it's more the S&P's BS. Everybody knows the other parties are full of shit. Nobody believes the Greens. Nobody believes the Lib Dems nonsense. Nobody believes the Tories. Some people maybe listen to Labour and believe they're bullshit, but the vast majority of people know they're all full of BS. But for some bizarre reason, the S&P seem to be exempt from this scrutiny. And that's what I'm trying to fucking put forward to people, and I've been trying for years. It's just stop buying into their BS for, vote for us for independence in the EU. Well, then it's not independent, is it? It's just, and I hate having it. It's like it's not even preaching to the choir. It's stating the obvious. Why the fuck am I stating the obvious? These people are supposed to be politicians. These people are supposed to be intelligent. They're supposed to be a hell of a lot more intelligent than I am or you are.
They're supposed to be
bizarre
questioning.
reason, exactly. But like the media is supposed to be holding them account and whatnot, but they never do. The opposition is supposed to be holding them account, but they never do. They're all in it together to a certain extent. But nobody ever states the obvious. And for some bizarre reason, that's been allowed to fester for years. And as a result, as I've said before in streams and whatnot, a cult has manifested as a result, where the S&P can say and do no wrong in this country, and absolutely everything they say, regardless of whether or not it's factual or completely inaccurate, it's allowed to go completely unchallenged, and the rest is history. And sadly, it's still the present day issue as well. And it's just ridiculous. Independence. Then you open up the manifesto in the EU. Well, then it's just fucking Jesus. What's this as well? The EU is the main cog and template for global governments, environmental, social governance. That's why the S&P will take Scotland to the altar of the international globalists. They don't hide it. No, they don't. They really don't hide it. But yet, quite often when you hear them speaking about what, in the day-to-day politics, it's independence. It's only when they're sort of pressed, it's in the EU. Or simultaneously, they will also say something along the lines of, the country's been butchered by austerity, the cost of living crisis that they blame on the Tories, despite the fact there's countries across the European Union that are facing, inflation and whatnot, but it's the Tories' fault, shush. Then they also slide in right at the end, very, very conveniently, and Brexit's damaged our economy, right? And the reason that they do that is because it's sort of like reverse psychology, that they can make the public, the electorate, believe or feel that Brexit is to blame for all their woes. Then they'll be more inclined to feel that if we reverse it, all of our woes will be solved. Independence and Brexit, or independence in the EU, not the fucking same thing. It's absolutely laughable. But on top of that as well, just on a wee side note before we continue on with what we were on about, fucking hell, we've been going on for so long, we haven't even got back to that video. I've got so many clips on my channel of the SNP, more specifically Nicola Sturgeon, making references to Scotland being part or rejoining the EU again, and acknowledging herself that in the event of us being part of the EU, we would have to pool, and this is the quote, pool some sovereignty, right? We would pool some sovereignty for the greater good. Now, what does that mean? That means that first and foremost, she's conceding that we would have some of our sovereignty, let's be honest, all of our sovereignty completely removed. But she's acknowledging herself that some of our sovereignty would be taken away for the greater good. Therefore, it's not independence. You know?
And the greater good of who? Not the people.
Yeah, exactly. The fucking EU. You know? Or the unelected bureaucrats and whatnot. And then you can go further up the chain and whatnot. But we're not going to do that tonight. Anyway, back to Kate Forehead, whatever she is. Fucking Jesus. Share screen. Yes, what we were. I don't think there's much left on that anyway, of that one. Then we're going to come to John Swinney. But yeah.
NHS, whether that is around our industry and economy, and whether that is when it comes to our constitutional future, if you believe that Scotland's interests should be heard loud and clear at Westminster, including on the
however,
Constitution,
you're not being honest. But you're not being
SNP.
honest with the voters, are you? You talk about funding, and economists have looked at your figures and your plans and have said that you rely on you getting back into the EU. Now, that is very unlikely to happen. You're not going to get that revenue you're expecting. And actually, if you were to leave the UK, economists are saying that will reduce your economic growth. So you're not even going to have the funds to try and support these public services like you're promising.
Well, let's unpack both of those figures, because they come from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, which has obviously been very clear about the £18 billion worth of cuts that Labour and the Conservatives are proposing. But in terms of our figures, they've actually said that our estimate of about £30 billion in additional tax revenue by re-entering the EU is not unreasonably high. And we've set out our approach. We are unashamedly pro-European Union. And I'll remind you, when it comes to democracy, that a majority of people in Scotland voted to remain.
Oh,
they did. So the IFS has set out that clearly. It also talks.
See, this is what I'm talking about, right? Right, we're not talking about BS in regards to like, the fiscal report said this and fiscal report said that, or what they didn't say, etc. Estimations, hypotheses, predictions, calculations, and whatnot. No. Just listen to this again.
Said that our estimate of about £30 billion in additional tax revenue by re-entering the EU is not unreasonably high. And we've set out our approach. We are unashamedly pro-European Union. And I'll remind you, when it comes to democracy, that a majority of people in Scotland voted to remain. And how did that go? So,
see, this is one of their tropes that they've been doing for years. And again, it goes back to what I'm trying to say here in regards to this narrative that they perpetuate. And because it's never challenged, never is it met with any pushback whatsoever, it's allowed for their narrative to not only appear plausible at a surface level, but it's allowed for people who are not as politically aware, or they might just be of voting age now and they're not necessarily aware of how things were several years ago, or just a cult for some of their cultish followers. They buy into this narrative that that in 2016 we voted to remain in the EU, but they never tell you why. Never tell you why. This is a very good video that I can't stress enough. I can't stress enough that people should be taking this video, clipping it, and sharing it everywhere whenever you hear this BS. Nicola Sturgeon, why independence is still fucking on the SNP's YouTube channel. Why independence? It's difficult to type with one hand. Supporters votes remain. Not playing the whole thing. We're just going to listen to a few sections. Where the fuck's it going? Oh, that's awkward. Wait, why oh, wait. Yeah. I don't need to type in Nicola Sturgeon. That's why. There we go. This came out literally several days before.
2 questions.
This came out several days before the referendum in 2016. Okay? Now, bear in mind, 2015, 2016, the SNP won landslide elections and whatnot, fallout from the referendum. in 2014. That kind of proves, as far as I'm concerned, that the referendum in 2014 was rigged. But regardless, that's why they won a lot of seats. That's why they obtained a lot of members in 2015 and 2016, because of the referendum result not going the way that people expected it to go, right? And as a result, she had a very, 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 very fucking large voter base of people that wanted independence. So what did she go and do? Well, this is what she went and did, literally days before the referendum. This is even the title of the video, why independent supporters should vote Remain in the EU this Thursday. It was the same week. Okay?
About the EU referendum. The first is, how can you support independence and back Scotland's membership of the EU? Well, the answer to that is simple. I believe that independent countries must cooperate to tackle common challenges. Every member of the EU is an independent country working with others for the greater good. The second question is whether a Brexit vote will mean a second independence referendum. Well, here's what the SNP manifesto at the recent election said about that. The Scottish Parliament should have the right to hold another referendum if there is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as Scotland being taken out of the European Union against our will. Now, I'm clear that if Scotland does indeed face that prospect of being taken out of Europe against our will, then that option is on the table. But to be clear, that situation only arises if Scotland votes Remain next week. If Scotland votes to leave, then that premise for independence doesn't arise.
If Scotland votes to leave, then that premise for independence doesn't arise. So, hey, all my brand new voters that have allowed us to have landslide election victories in 2015 and 2016, if you want an independence referendum, you need to vote to remain in the EU, because if you vote to leave the EU, that premise for independence doesn't arise. Okay, fast forward, and now we have Kate Forehead going, oh, well, actually, if you remember in 2016, we wanted to stay in the EU. Why? This is the point. I can't fathom for the life of me how people have fallen for this bullshit.
Because of short memories.
They do. They legitimately
They forget from
do.
one campaign to the next what they were promised
Mm-hmm.
or what they were told. And a lot of these people who vote SNP happen to follow a certain football team, and they go to certain types of places of worship.
Yeah.
And apparently they were being directed by the leaders of these places of worship and which way to place their votes.
Yeah.
Which it just showcases there is no such thing as an independent voter voting for independence because they're being corralled, whether it's in schools. The schools are telling the kids, this is the subjects that you should care about, and this is the main challenges that will face you as a young adult in this world. And they're pushing shite that doesn't even really matter, like climate and the LGBT and these viruses and whatever. They're pushing all these things on kids.
Yeah.
Which, in the grand scheme of things, amounts to fuck all. Like when you break the figures down for climate, you break the figures down for the whole corona thing, and you break the figures down for LGBT. This was a minuscule problem that was blown up.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that's been spent on these things to push them. The kids think that these are the biggest challenges facing their generation, when the truth is that nobody's challenging it, and the kids aren't getting a balanced view. So they believe that these challenges are the be all and end all because nobody's giving them a counter argument against it. And that's the young generation. You've got the older ones who are voting for their own, either selfish. Some of the SNP voters are selfish because they're voting because they want independence from Westminster before they die. And it's not going to happen, so they're just handing
Do you know
away.
what I will say in regards to them? They really confused me. These people are like fucking like hi, I'm Douglas and I've voted SNP for 70 years. I'm like, have you? Aye. So in that time frame, okay, maybe not 70, but like 60 years, 50 years, whatever. It's like, so in your lifetime, you've watched the SNP take a significant swing from what would be classified as right-wing politics to left-wing politics. And on top of that, you've also witnessed the SNP go from being about independence to a European Union type movement. You know, and yet you still back them to the hill, and you've got no reservations, no complaints. You still act as if it's the same party that it was when you first signed up to them.
Did SNP not actively speak out against the European Commission?
The EEC, yeah, they did in the run up to the referendum for.
So the same thing that they want us to remain part of, they were against back in the day.
Yeah, it's funny, yeah. And I thought, I mean, if I remember rightly as well, I think it was in Inverness, funnily enough. I think it was, I can't remember what year it was, but the S&P conference in Inverness, they agreed that to sort of move away from the idea that if a majority of S&P MPs were elected, then it would automatically trigger a mandate for a referendum. They voted against that. It was either that or something to do with the EU. I really can't remember it. I think that's why Jim Sailors eventually walked away from the party. I don't know. I don't really want to like quote things that are incorrect in nature, but it was one of those two things anyway from memory. But no, that's absolutely right. The EEC, the SNP were vehemently against the idea of remaining part of the EEC. They campaigned against remaining in the EEC, stating multiple things that we are now stating ourselves about the idea of the EU. You know, this is back when it was like a trading bloc, and they're talking about the idea that it threatens sovereignty and whatnot. It was a trading bloc, you know. Now, obviously, it's manifested into the European Union, and you know, the rest is history in that regard. And it's just engulfing the vast majority of nations across the European continent, and as a result, the vast majority of countries, courtesy of having politicians who are hook, line, and sinker, ideologically aligned with the bureaucrats and whatnot, punting out fucking cancerous policies, such as we've already got the United Nations Migration Compact. Now the EU have got their own variation of it. You know, things like that. I mean, the stuff that they're doing is absolutely it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. What's going on that continent now? Anyway, but yeah, let's get this shit. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Try and get through this evening. The hashtag is BBCDN on social media for you to get involved in the debate from home. Our third question of the night comes from Keith Littlejohn. Keith, good evening.
Does the opinion of independent supporters matter less to Westminster than those who want to remain in the Union?
Ooh, Keith, what do you think?
I think a recent poll showed that 51% of Scotland supported independence, but the main leaders have said they don't support it. How have they just ruled out half the population?
Kenny McCaskill, your manifesto comes out next week, and Alex Salmond says that it will contain the only serious plan for devolution. Give us a headline from it.
Well, at the end of the day, independence is necessary, because I was saying earlier, we are an energy-rich country and a fuel-poor people. It's utterly perverse that we're in that situation.
So how do you deliver it?
Well, I think what you have to do when a referendum is ruled out, then every election has to become a de facto referendum. And that is why every vote for an independent supporting party should be viewed as a mandate for independence.
That's what the SNP say.
No, they're not. They're seeking to ask for a Section 30 order and to ask Sir Keir Starmer to give them that. What we are saying is that the election is the trigger point for independence, and a vote for independence will be delivered that way. But the gentleman is quite right, because they have been treating independent supporters with contempt and indeed with disdain. The comment about protest and terrorism and all the aspects where those who support independence are classified along with others who are waging war or undermining civil society is simply wrong and disrespectful. That is, I say, the position taken by Sunak. Those who have supported independence in Scotland have done so peacefully, democratically, and yet they have been treated with utter contempt, and that will continue by a Labour government as it has been imposed by a Tory government, and that is why the Scottish people have to use the election as an opportunity to say, enough, we want independence.
Michael Mara.
So I don't support independence.
Oh, of course you don't, dickhead. I will say, like, the Alba's position, from what I've read on their manifesto, it's a bit more palatable. However, if you read the small print, so to speak, they want Scotland to become independent, but they then in turn want to join the EFTA, like EFTA, I think it's pronounced. And you might think, well, that's sort of like a middle ground that we could all agree upon. That's fair enough, I guess. You know, you're not entrenched within the European Union's sort of bureaucratic policies and whatnot, but you sort of get the benefits of trade, etc. However, There's small print, clearly states until like a later date, until we have a referendum of sorts and to determine whether or not we want to rejoin the EU or not. It's all just about the EU 24/7. Why can't we just become an independent in this hypothetical world? Why can't Scotland? This is rhetorical to a certain extent. Why can't Scotland just become an independent country that has trading agreements with the rest of what remains of the UK, of course. Obviously, the UK would, to a certain extent, be disbanded, wouldn't it, if Scotland left? But let's just say, for argument's sake, trading agreements with the UK, our allies, our friends, etc., hold close ties, trading agreements with whomever else we so choose to have trading agreements with, etc., and yet just govern ourselves. Why is that seriously too much to ask? Why is it that you've got two choices in this country? It's just open your borders and spread your butt cheeks for European Union bureaucrats, or remain shackled to a Westminster establishment that's just butchering you regardless anyway, regardless of whether you're in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, or fucking Scotland. You're getting pumped up the butthole anyway. It's the worst of both worlds. I mean, if anything, I think it should go a long way to showcase one thing that we've sort of highlighted a few times on and off tonight, and that is the fact that there is actually no real legitimate nationalistic force within Scotland, because the only sort of nationalistic auras that you see or personalities that you see are dickheads that want to take you out of the UK just to shove you into the EU, to become subservient to people that you will never vote for. But they've got a problem with fucking Westminster, It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Pitting people against each other, unionism versus nationalism. They're not fucking nationalists. This is what annoys me, Like, even like the papers and that, you've seen it yourself, like the Scottish Daily Express, like, oh, the net, they're not fucking nationalists. Stop calling them nationalists. That Press and Journalist, nationalist. That Silver Fox Hot Takes, where the fuck he's called, oh, the nationalists. Oh, yeah, he's called them Nazis as well, which is fucking retarded. But, the nationalists. The Conservative Party in Scotland, or just further afield in Westminster, the nationalists. Everybody calls them nationalists, Go to Twitter, they're called anybody that doesn't like them, they're not.
And they don't even like that.
Yeah, but it's not even actually in their name. National's not nationalist, for fuck's sake. But yeah, I know that they've said that they wish that they could change their party name and whatnot, but they're not nationalists, Like, nothing about them is national. Yeah. Or call themselves a European Union movement, Call it well, yeah, like the Scottish European Union movement party. I don't fucking know what you want to call yourselves, but stop running around with saltires and pretending you give a shit about Scotland, pretending when it suits you to care about Scottish history and Scottish culture and Scottish people who more often than not, you don't even fucking acknowledge exist as a distinct people. Not anybody can be Scottish. Well, if anybody can be Scottish, then what are we actually fighting for? What are we proud of? About a bit of fucking land? That's really what it boils down to. If anybody can be Scottish, then there's literally no point in feeling a connection to our history.
That's what they want, though.
Of course that's what they want, but it makes no sense coming from the point of view of cunts who are perceived as nationalistic in nature. They're fucking not. They clearly are not. But anyway, I don't want to listen to this dickhead. Where is it? I just want this clip here, and then we're going to the last clip of John Sweeney, because he's just a twat. But there's this absolute gonk in the audience that's coming up here. Listen to this nonsense.
We'll be doing that again in 2 years' time, I'm sure. Man in the pig at the back.
Well, the polls apparently show that Labour are going to do quite well in Scotland. So what that would mean, if it turns out to be true, is that you're going to have a lot of independent supporters, perhaps lending their vote to Labour. Are you really telling them that you're going to deny them their democracy? And actually, that goes for the rest of the panel. How many of you are democracy deniers?
Democracy. I mean, again, I'm just going to pull this article up just to remind people here, because this is bullshit. I'm sick of this shit. Independent Scotland in the European Union without referendum. Angus Robertson. Okay? Okay. Democracy denial. It's just ridiculous. I mean, they got to stop fucking peddling this bullshit without any pushback. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if anything, if anybody watching the stream, take one thing away from the stream, if nothing else, at least when you hear them come away with that shitey line, throw these articles at them, or throw the manifesto at them, regardless. Nicola Sturgeon does not intend to hold referendum and EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. Democracy denial. How is that not denying democracy? You know? But anyway, get this last clip out of the way, and then we'll get to Swinny, and then we will conclude proceedings. Yes. There we go. Share this.
Far from it. I know, make no bones about it. I'm a conservative and a unionist. I campaigned for Scotland to remain in the United Kingdom in 2014. I would do so if there was another referendum. I believe Scotland's place is best served as a part of the wider United Kingdom. I'm equally proud to be Scottish and British and will always remain so.
Answer his point. Are you denying democracy?
No, I respect the result of the 2014 referendum on Scottish independence in the same vein that I respect the 2016 referendum on.
Hang on a second. Of this country and of your constituency.
Sorry, just say that again. We missed that there.
Oh, what I'm saying is it doesn't really matter what Andrew Bowie's opinion on independence is. He is supposed to be a representative of the people. If the people want a referendum, they should have one. And to say no is to deny democracy.
Well, people should be under no illusions that in the forthcoming election, if they vote for Scottish Conservative and Unionist candidates, they're voting for there not to be another referendum on Scottish independence, and that they would be voting for candidates that would represent them in the Westminster Parliament that would campaign to keep Scotland in the United Kingdom. But in terms of being a democracy denier, I respect the result of the 2014 referendum where Scotland voted to remain in the United Kingdom, in the same way that having campaigned to remain, I respect the result of the 2016 referendum to leave the European Union. I think it's very important that we have these questions asked and we respect the results, and then we move on and build from that. And that is what we've done in Scotland. That's what we're doing across the United Kingdom.
Lady in the blue top.
Here it comes.
You say in the 2014 election, you respect that result. We were told by David Cameron that if we voted to remain in the UK, we would stay in the EU. He then introduced the Brexit referendum. Brexit has been a disaster.
This is what I've sort of touched upon a few times throughout the stream. And it's not so much, as I said, anything to do with like political points going in and whatnot, but it's the people that follow the SNP's fucking bullshit. That is completely factually incorrect what that woman has just said there.
We never got Brexit for a start.
No, but no, regardless of like that stuff, like let's go back to 2014 here, okay?
About David Cameron.
Okay? As far back as 2013, there was David Cameron was speaking about if he was elected in the upcoming election, which I think was in I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015. I think it was 2015, but he was saying as far back as 2013 that if he was elected, there would be a referendum on European Union membership. As far back as 2013. But this narrative has permeated throughout society, not just in Scotland, throughout the media class, throughout the conversations from day-to-day basis with people and whatnot, which allows for people like this woman here to confidently say something that's vehemently incorrect. David Cameron told us that we knew the only way to stay in the EU was to vote Remain. I mean, think about it. Think about this laughable bullshit. It's self-explanatory, is it not? It's self-explanatory because the UK was a member of the EU. Therefore, if Scotland voted to leave the UK, we would no longer be a member of the EU. I mean, it's self-explanatory.
Logic plays no part in politics.
No, especially when these people are concerned. It shouldn't have taken David Cameron, allegedly, or anybody else to convince you that in order to stay in the EU, you must vote to remain. I mean, it's just nonsense. But this narrative that they have perpetuated for years now is that little innocent and naive Scottish people were really torn about what to do when it came to voting for independence in 2014. And the reason they were so torn is because all that they could think about was pronouns in their bios, whether or not to cut their tits off, and the European Union. You know, they were so torn about what to do because the European Union was the be-all and fucking end-all. And then, of course, David Cameron walked out on a fucking stage and told them, listen, my Scottish friends, if you want to stay in the EU, you make sure you vote to remain in the UK. I mean, and everybody voted accordingly, apparently. It's just nonsense. Now, I'm going to go to the toilet, but I'm going to leave you with a question here that you can sort of elaborate on before this goes on. Do you remember the 2014 referendum? after the results came in, now obviously there's arguments to be made about rigging and skullduggery, but at any point, do you remember any of the explanations from any of the media outlets making any reference to the EU? Oh, it's 55-45 because people want to stay in the EU. Never heard it once, huh? I never heard it once. Did you?
No.
It's just, I don't know. It's just fucking stupid. So that's that clip done. This is our last one for the evening, and it's the best one of all. It's our bald, unelected First Minister. You get him up here. Just pause it wherever you want. I need to go and have a.
Just let me play the
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get up. Yes.
Okay, one down, 3 to go. So stick with us. Still to come, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Prime Minister and Conservative leader, Rishi Sunak. But next up, would you please welcome the leader of the Scottish National Party, John Swinney. Good to see you. Welcome. So, rules the same with you. John, answer the question, keep to the point. That's the name of the game here.
Do that.
Okay, let's take our first question, which is from Andrew Atkinson. Hang on, let's get the microphone to you. There you go.
Given the recent scandals and dramas with the SNP, how will you differ from your predecessors and project competence?
I think the honest answer is that we've had a very tough time as a party in the last couple of years, and as a consequence of all of those difficulties, I'm here to lead the Scottish National Party.
Should we just sum up those difficulties for those who may not be aware? So you are the third SNP First Minister year and a half. The former Chief Executive of the SNP has been charged with embezzlement. Nicola Sturgeon and another senior figure in the party are under criminal investigation. I should add, all deny wrongdoing. So it's been a pretty turbulent time.
It has been a turbulent time, and I'd be the first to accept that and to admit that. So my party's asked me to lead it through this election campaign and beyond the 2026 parliamentary elections to essentially do two things. To first of all, rebuild trust between the electorate and the Scottish National Party, and I've always worked throughout my political life to build trust and confidence with the electorate that have chosen me. And secondly, to provide the direction that's necessary in the Scottish Government to change people's lives. And that's my primary duty as First Minister of Scotland, to make sure that we change lives and to improve lives of people in Scotland. And I've set that programme out by establishing a focus on eradicating child poverty, on achieving the transition to net zero, on strengthening the Scottish economy and improving our public services. And by doing that, I hope to rebuild the trust of people in Scotland, which I accept the SNP has got to earn on a constant basis.
Andrew, where are you? Are you convinced by that?
Well, I'm an Englishman living in Yorkshire, but I have family in Scotland, and I've always been impressed by the way the SNP particularly held the Conservatives to account at Westminster, you know, held them to account for their scandals. I think it's been a real disappointment these last 18 months or so with the SNP, so that's why I'm hoping to have rebuilt, you know, on behalf of my family in Scotland.
I mean, how has it gone so badly wrong, John? Because I mean, the SNP has been known for its discipline, its party discipline, for its stability. You've been a key figure in the SNP for a long time. Where's it all gone wrong?
Well, there's obviously been challenges about the issues that you've set out, and also we've got to recognise the importance of delivering on the priorities of the public. So when I look at some of the issues that we've delivered on, for example, we've recently expanded or doubled the availability of early learning and childcare for families in our country, so that every 3- and 4-year-old, and for many 2-year-olds, get access to full-time early learning and childcare, which saves a family about £5,500 a year per child. And it's policies like that that make a real difference to the lives of children and young people and families in our country that we need to deliver on. We've established a Scottish child payment, which puts about £26 every week into households of low-income families to try to help with the cost of living and to eradicate child poverty. Now, these are examples where I think the SNP is delivering to individuals and to households around the country to make that difference. And we've got to do more of that.
So effectively, what they're saying there is they want to get more access to Scottish kids. In my book, get them early, this free childcare for more kids just means more indoctrination at a younger age.
And on top of that as well, I'll say is like childminders have gone out of business.
Because there's no independent like childminders. It's all these big sort of chains now.
Yeah.
Hey kids, a lot of people are having kids and they're in there from 6 weeks of age, and they're getting hit with all this crap until they start school, and they go into school and they're getting hit with this crap. They're getting no counterbalance because their parents aren't politically aware, so they've got nothing to argue against it. They don't know any different.
Yeah, no. Oh, John Swinney, yeah.
They don't know any different.
No. I mean, they just get, it's just repetitive tropes. Just the same shit every fucking
They're
time.
always after kids. Have you noticed?
Oh.
As we take forward our agenda to transform lives within Scotland.
Question from woman at the back.
It appears the SNP has become a bit complacent given these scandals. Do you think that's because of the one-party domination of the SNP in the last 10 years? And should there be some change in the electoral system to allow for more opinions that might challenge the SNP and prevent this complacency?
Well, actually, if you look at the history of the SNP government over 17 years, the first 4 years we were a minority government, very much a minority.
Yes, yes, you were. And
for
I
5
just
years we were a majority government. For the next 5 years, we're.
want to add in something there. Remember when they promised to scrap council tax?
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And their excuse at the time was, "Oh, well, you know, it was our manifesto pledge, but we're a minority government." Then they became a majority government, and they did fucking hee-haw.
Well, they shut down all the public services first, and then they increased the council
Yes.
tax. And then
Paying
they
more
fucked
than
all-
ever.
They fucked all the roads.
Yeah, paying fucking more than ever now. Anyway.
A minority government, and we're back to being a minority government again. So we actually don't have that overall control of the political system. We've got to, if I want to get a law passed by the Scottish Parliament, I can't just instruct my colleagues to vote for it. I've got to win friends and allies. So on every piece of legislation, on every budget, we've got to win friends and allies. And one of the things that I think...
So why do you think the woman back there, sorry, what's your name? Grace, it says what she's getting from the SNP is complacency.
Well, what I want to make sure is that we don't have any whiff of that whatsoever, and that we work hard, as I answered Andrew's question, to win the trust and confidence of the public. And one of the things that really worries me about politics today, and I accept that I might actually have played a part in creating this, is the polarisation of debate. And I think there's a need to bring people together. And when I became First Minister just 6.5 weeks ago, I pledged that I would reach out beyond my party to other parties, to other opinions, to try to bring people together. Because I think what's wrong with our society today is that we're not together, we are polarised, and we need to bring people back together again.
Okay. Let's take a question from Sam.
Yeah, with some bit of applause, but what he's effectively doing there is alluding to like bringing people together regardless of whether or not you're in favour of allied independence, but yet in the next breath, I vote for them as in for independence anyway. So it's like you're not really doing anything to rectify or quell the aforementioned polarisation that we see across Scottish society. If anything, they are the sole contributors to what would be classified as polarisation, would you not say?
Yeah. They're all about dividing the population into smaller camps.
Yeah.
Previously,
Jeez. Yeah. Okay, now. Wrong
Brian,
video.
where
Wrong
are
video.
you? That's you.
Are you going to carry on with independence referenda until you get the answer you want?
So are you going to carry on? Thank you, Sam. Are you going to carry on? No, absolutely. Very good to hear your question. Are you going to carry on with independence and referenda till you get the answer you want?
Thank you for your question, Sam, and I accept it's an important question and one that's on the minds of many people.
SNP
I think politics nowadays needs to have people setting out what they believe in.
They get what they
And
want.
I
regardless.
honestly believe...
Because, like, think about it. If they'd ever won their alleged independence...
They'd have no need for them anymore. They'd be defunct.
No, I don't necessarily believe that, but do you think there would be any allowance for a movement to have a referendum to reverse their referendum, you know?
Yeah. And this is the thing that these people that are voting for these arseholes keep saying that... I don't know what my point was now. I've lost my train of thought. No, it's gone. My point has just vanished.
Boomer.
It'll come back.
Probably.
It will.
But no, it's like just every single election cycle, it's the same thing. Independence, 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 independence. And then they know damn well they're not going to get it.
And that was my point. Like, a lot of people have said, specifically hardcore SNP voters that have voted SNP for decades, and I've seen this split between the people who did vote for them and the people who stopped voting for them. Majority of them being females, and it was all to do with the LGBT school sex education type of thing. And the majority of the guys were saying, well, if we get independence, this is a big if. So if we vote and we get independence, we'll just toss these cunts out.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen because all these measures to even just criticise these people for their policies, if you criticise them on LGBT policies, it's because you're a transphobe. It's not because you're concerned about the push on kids to mutilate themselves in schools, or if you're against immigration. Again, it's not because you're just worried that your demography of your country's changing before your eyes and your services are being stretched. It's because you're a racist. And any counter argument that you've got to anything that they're bringing in, they're just deeming you far right.
Yeah.
So these people saying, oh, but, and then it's a hate crime to publicly voice these things or to start any sort of campaign. If you were to start an anti-immigration campaign, you'd be targeted by security services. Your door would be getting kicked in. You'd be getting sacked for your job. You'd be shamed on Facebook.
Yeah.
You can't do these things in this country under a so-called SNP government because they've changed the entire fucking country.
And yet they're nationalists.
They're nationalists apparently, but these people think they can vote them out once they get this independence.
Yeah, I've never understood that. I've never understood that logic, but a lot of people do genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that is. We'll just vote for them until we get our independence, and then we'll get them to fuck it. Yeah, good luck with that. But the SNP are like, in theory, they should be like any other sort of pressure group in terms of their end goal should be to achieve what they intend to achieve in order to evaporate as a party or an entity.
Almost like UKIP with fucking
Farage. Get independence and then fuck off. Like, there's no need for you anymore. That's what the SNP allegedly should be there for. But now, like, as you're quite clearly seeing, especially in recent years, it's just, even with like the COVID stuff, like when the lockdowns and all that ended, it's like they passed that COVID bill. So they extended their powers. Now they're permanent, like total overreach, government overreach.
And nobody is complaining. I remember years ago, people would protest about the prices of fuel.
Yeah.
And now people are paying through the nose for electricity. They're paying through the nose for their petrol and diesel. And nobody's even complaining about it. When's the last time you actually had anybody complaining, the price of diesels went up another fucking penny? If it went up on the budget, which was what, twice a year, I think they have the annual budget at Westminster. If fags went up, beer went up, or petrol went up, everybody used to kick up a stink.
Yeah,
and they
they're
would moan.
just so conditioned to it though.
Now people are like, oh well, we're paying an extra £1 on the fuel at the pump. Who cares? Like, but it's to save the planet. They've become brainwashed into believing this shite. Even though Gordon Brown and Tony Blair sold diesel cars to people as the green option. That was the green option of its day. Now it's electric vehicles, which aren't even any more
You're actually
environmentally
paying
friendly.
more for an electric vehicle now than you are for a
Hey,
normal
it used to be
car.
cheaper to put diesel in your car than to put petrol in, and I've got a diesel car, and I pay more at the pumps for diesel than somebody who's putting petrol in their car. However, the new E10 or whatever it is, petrol that they're putting in cars, and this, like, I've had a lot of hassle with my petrol lawnmower over the last year, as you're well aware. Apparently, if you leave these vehicles sitting for any length of time, it attracts moisture into the engine, which is where the problems start. This E10 thing isn't designed to be sat idle. So if you've got a car, maybe an old person only uses it once a month to go to an appointment, the car's going to go fucked. If you've got it in a petrol lawnmower or a hedge cutter that's only getting used a couple of times a year, again, I've experienced this. You cannot leave this fuel, and so they're putting the stuff that they're charging you through the nose for, and it's wrecking the thing that you've paid a lot of money for, and taxes. In the public transport system, I came up here in a bus, as I do usually because I don't like that drive, but the public transport system is crap, and you cannot get a bus that's got a functioning toilet for a 4-hour drive or that has air conditioning at a comfortable level. There's always some issue with the buses. They tend to run pretty much most of the year, even better than the trains, I would say. The buses have been...
The difference between the buses and the trains was the trains have been nationalised, but yet despite the fact it's been nationalised, it's not been for the betterment of society.
No, and it's more expensive.
And the second there's a bit of fucking hailstorm,
Hail or wind.
or a bit of wind, or a bit of rain, the trains are cancelled.
Aye. How many times last year were the trains cancelled? And the buses ran pretty much the entire time, even through that bad snow. But try to get a bus in the summer with it being boiled alive or frozen to death or having a toilet. They're trying to get you at your cars, specifically on these big journeys. And I don't take my car into Glasgow because the bus lanes, the LEZ stuff, my car is compliant at this point because it's young enough to be able to get into the city centre for now. But you go into the city centre, it's a minefield. You don't know if this street's a bus lane. You don't know if you're going to be getting spotted in a camera. You don't know if you're going to get a parking fine. You don't know if you can park. It's just stress. And they've made it as difficult as possible for people to use their own private vehicles in the big cities. And they're making it as difficult as possible to use these public services, whether it's cars, trains, even planes. Like, how many times was their planes cancelled last year as well? Glasgow Airport, there was quite a few planes. They're trying to make it more difficult for folk to go on holiday because they don't want people moving about. And then even within your own country, if you can't afford to go to Spain or Turkey for a week's holiday and you want to stay in Scotland, they want to charge you a tourist tax to go to fucking Edinburgh or Dundee or another city. If you don't come from that city and you want to live for a couple of days, get a wee holiday, a city break, they want to charge you money for holidaying in your own country, which is an absolute shambles. And the fact that nobody's complaining about it, I've not heard anybody complaining about that.
To be fair, well, I'd say part of the reason for the lack of complaints in that regard is because it's not actually coming to affect you
yet, but it will, and most people are going to be affected because a lot of people, specifically folk with young kids, maybe going abroad's too much hassle, they can't afford it. And I know that when my kids were wee, we never went anywhere abroad. It was too expensive. So in order to spend money in your own country and boost your own economy, they're going to penalise you by charging you a tourist tax.
Progressivism.
That Scotland would be a stronger country and would have better prospects if we were an independent country. That's been my view, my honest view over my entire adult life. But I'm a Democrat, so I accept that we can't be an independent country until the people of Scotland vote for us to be an independent country. And I do believe in the right of the people of Scotland to decide their own future. I think generally there's an accepted view that self-determination of the right of people to decide how they should be governed is an important political principle.
Oh,
and I think
really?
what politics today needs is politicians who will set out
self-determination. Again, I will not tire of pulling up these things here. Share this tab instead. Just again, self-determination. independent Scotland would rejoin the European Union without referendum. Angus Robertson. Nicola Sturgeon, prior to this, Nicola Sturgeon does not intend to hold a referendum on EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. I'm just going to go through these articles ever so slightly because it's just in case people think, oh, yeah, it's misleading headlines. And it's not. Nicola Sturgeon has said she does not plan to hold a referendum on EU membership if Scotland becomes independent. It would be assumed that Scots want an independent Scotland to rejoin the EU or join the EU, effectively making IndyRef 2 a double referendum with a vote for independence taken as a vote in favour of EU membership. Speaking at a media briefing following the SNP's manifesto, Nicola Thinlips, the leader at said time, has said holding another referendum on EU membership was not my policy. In terms of timing for Scotland rejoining the EU, Thinlips said she would begin discussion with the EU around the time of any independence vote. Okay, and this one here with Angus Robertson. A vote for Scottish independence would automatically be a vote to rejoin the European Union, Scotland's Constitution Secretary has said. Angus Robertson, in an exclusive interview with Holyrood, said there would be no need for a separate referendum post-independence on whether to apply to join the EU, because the choice put to the electorate would be between independence within the EU or staying in the UK. And of course, as it then goes on to reference their sort of prospectus papers and whatnot, their independence one in particular, or the European Union one in particular, I should say, makes references, again, to what this article is echoing. So when these people make these absolute fictitious claims about giving people in Scotland a right to choose, or they make references to democracy, where they make references to independence, it's just laughable. And quite frankly, it highlights the severity of the landscape, politically speaking, in terms of never any pushback. Why? Rhetorical, of course. It allows for these narratives that the SNP perpetuate to solidify, and it allows for a sort of core base to be able to consolidate on the back of it, because there's a sort of narrative that they're presenting. If everything that they were saying was legitimate, they would have a point. And dare I say, I probably would agree with their fucking point, whether or not I like them. But they don't have a point. They don't have a leg to stand on because they're talking shite. But the problem that we have here is that nobody holds their feet to the fire. Nobody calls them out on their BS. Nobody presents them with any pushback, whether that be the mainstream media, whether that be the people who on the internet or elsewhere who are politically opposed to the SNP and their BS, or whether it be the political parties in Parliament and whatnot. Nobody ever does. Nobody holds them to account. These people are full of shit. The people of Scotland should have a right to determine their own future. Really? Really? Hypocrites. Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine. They're trying to price working families out of the last little luxury they have, the car and the holiday. I mean, I'm not going to get too bogged down on like additional tabs and whatnot, but I have done videos and streams in the past. I'll get a video up that I did, and I'll post it in the chat if you want to look at it. It's about 50 minutes long, but I go through a lot of documentation from like Transport Scotland and the Scottish Government, etc. And Transport Scotland make reference to pricing people off the roads
Being confident in doing so.
Yeah, but it was more like it was like a last sort of roll of the dice if their behavioural change initiatives didn't work and whatnot. They were going to there was sort of suggestions being made to
They'll shoehorn you into making that choice.
Yeah, but that's what it said, like pricing people off the road in regards to like increasing taxes and whatnot. There's it in the chat there if you want to have a wee look at that. But no, you're absolutely bang on with that comment. As for your secondary comment there, independent country, a country that panders to minorities and a supernatural dictatorship, not really independent. Exactly. This is what I keep saying. They're not nationalists. It's like I shouldn't have to say this shit. I mean, they're not. I wouldn't even call them civic nationalists. They're fucking not.
It's like Sinn Féin. They were supposed.
They're identical.
Sinn Féin were supposedly the anti-British, pro-Irish arm of the IRA.
Yeah.
But what have they merged into? The exact same shite that SNP is, which is just a globalist cocksucker who pushes the same agendas that all these countries across Europe are pushing.
Yeah.
They've totally annihilated the things that made Ireland what it was has been totally eradicated by these people. Yet people still think Sinn Féin are this dissident arm totally opposed to Westminster. They were just as bad as SNP on the whole COVID stuff.
They're identical to the SNP. The
are-
same with like
They're all
Cumbria.
for like full-term abortions and stuff. When
Yeah.
Ireland were notoriously against abortion, both parts of Ireland, it was pretty frowned upon to be aborting children. Now it's like, oh well, we've forgotten what our morals were. And I've got a video, I've posted it multiple times. It's Michael Martin from the Republic of Ireland apologising for the way that the women in Ireland were treated, like the mother and baby homes, where they were made to feel like outcasts. Yet at the same point, they were doing exactly the same thing. The exact same point he delivered the speech, he was apologising for the way that society shamed and treated these people. He was shaming people who refused to take certain medical instruments. And it was the exact same fucking tactic that was used on the people, except it was the Catholic Church that was doing the shaming back in the day, supported by the state.
One thing as well, I'll say, but which is quite peculiar when you think about it. Across the European Union, right, you've got these sort of fake far right, quote unquote. They're not far right, but like that's how they're. But they're painted as far right by the mainstream media and their political opponents. But yet in Britain, our nationalist movements, whether it's Plaid Cymru, Sinn Féin, or the SNP, they are the most, on paper anyway, left-wing, airy-fairy, khaki shitey, like just cringe. Like every other party across the European Union who is deemed nationalistic in nature is immediately classified as far right. But yet in Britain, the nationalistic parties, like arguably as left wing, so to speak, is like the most insane factions of the Green Party. It's remarkable. But yeah.
What they actually believe in, set it out openly to the public and ask the public to judge. And one of the frustrations I've got is that today in the Scottish Parliament, there is a majority in favour of there being a referendum on independence and that Scotland should be an independent country, but we're not being permitted by the United Kingdom government to put that idea and that concept to the public. And I think we should have the right to do so.
Well,
even that.
Obviously, there was a
even that. Oh, a referendum on independence. But what do you mean by independence? Say it. Say it, you bald dick. They won't. But they pick and choose when they make reference to the European Union. More often than not, they just continue to LARP as they're campaigning for independence.
referendum in 2014, which you lost. You're now saying in your manifesto, I mean, independence is front and centre, that if you win the majority of Scottish seats at Westminster, 29, I think it is, that you will consider a mandate to ask the UK government for another way to negotiate independence. I assume that the opposite also applies, that if you do not get that majority of 29 seats, you will also take that as a democratic decision that you shouldn't be pursuing independence.
Well, what I want to make sure is, and it's really related to the point that I answered Sam about a moment ago, is that the legitimate decisions of the people of Scotland in the election in 2021, where a Scottish Parliament was elected with a majority of members favouring independence and a referendum, that can actually be respected by the United Kingdom government.
But in your manifesto, you're talking about this election. So surely you can't say, on the one hand, if we win the majority of seats, Scottish seats at Westminster, that is giving us the green light to see if we can get another referendum. But if you don't win them, surely that is giving you the red light.
Well, essentially,
but I don't hear you saying that.
What I want is I want people in Scotland to confidently vote for the SNP to make sure we can turn that manifesto into reality.
Okay, but just answer that question,
and we can
John.
actually we can deliver on what people asked the Parliament to deliver on in 2021.
If you do not get the majority of Scottish seats at Westminster. What does that tell you about your mandate to ask for another referendum?
Well, what I want to do during the election campaign is to encourage people to vote for the SNP.
Okay, so you're not answering that question.
To enable us to deliver on that policy commitment, which is right at the heart of our manifesto.
Are you going to answer that question or not?
Well, what I'm saying is that I want people to vote for the SNP to make this happen.
I think that's a no. All right, you've got a question here.
Yeah.
Hang on, let's get a microphone to you.
So I'm a Scottish person working now in England. I work for the manufacturing sector, which you know at the moment is struggling for growth all the way through the UK. With the SNP, it seems to me that every problem is, as you guys keep saying, the road leads to Westminster. I don't believe that that's the case. So can you tell me specifically what the SNP would do to support the growth in the manufacturing sector? Specifically, please.
The first thing I would do is I would argue, as we argue in our manifesto, for us to rejoin the European Union.
And there it is.
That, I think, is the source of problems in the manufacturing.
There it is. All of our problems could be solved. Just join the European Union. What we want. You know what I mean? Borat, hold my beer. Or as John Swinney would say, Borat, hold my tequila. Or my Lambrini. I'm going in. Well, we want. We rejoin European Union. All problems solved. Oh, yes. Why don't you stop punting multi-million pound donations to the likes of fucking Kenya and where else did they do it? Is it Pakistan? No, it's not Rwanda. It's like I can't remember. There's like several countries in like Africa and whatnot where we punt foreign aid to annually. On top of that, we were the first country in the world to start punting money to a sort of international fund that we created ourselves, and eventually other countries have started to get involved. It's effectively the equivalent of climate reparations, you know, because white man bad, white man create climate change. You know, what about like even though it's like it's arguably irrelevant in terms of financial summary or sums even, but like your 50 grands here and your 25 grands here to your like LGBT of Scotland's, etc. Stop fucking pretending that you've got absolutely no money to spend on things that are important when you squander so much money on nonsensical social justice / climate change / politically ideal, or should I say politically, oh fucking hell, I'm trying to think of the way to describe this. Regardless, like social justice policies, like just gay shit. Stop fucking doing it, okay? Okay, stop doing that. Then you will have a bit of credibility to then turn around and go, oh well, we joined European Union and everything be okay because we've got the money to spend. Well, when you've got like 2.5 million for our climate justice fund and whatnot, you know.
Remember Glasgow University? I think it was like 20 million quid or something. They wanted to put in for reparations.
Oh, we've heard this shit for years, but it's just like they just fucking annoy me. Like this woman asked a question, and I don't know the answer to her question because I'm not an economist. But the answer is not to go, well, I can't answer your question. It's European Union. That's what we need. Like fucking just change the record, you bald, four-eyed, politically inept fucking bobag. Just change the record. Seriously. But they can't. It's European Union, European Union. Oh.
How does bringing more people into this country, migrants, whether they're white and Eastern European or whether they're black and Asians, how does that help the average Scot to get ahead and get a job and to be able to access the services that their ancestors, their forefathers have paid for? How does that help the average person of this country by bringing these people here when, according to
my GDP.
Was it last week, the week before, that video that said 131 languages spoken in Glasgow school?
Aye.
131 fucking languages. They couldn't even print 131 fucking leaflets. They can't repair and replace books that the kids in one language are reading, the majority language, yet they can afford to bring in interpreters and fucking translators, and they can stage all these events for all these different religious festivals to the detriment of our native festivals and our native traditions. We've given up calling Easter, and it's now like they called them festival eggs or some shit like that. They're calling them. And then Christmas, they're changing Christmas. from whether you're a Christian or not, but the majority of kids in this country celebrate Christmas whether they believe in Christ or not, because it's about giving presents and Santa Claus, which is totally the wrong message if you're a Christian. However, the majority of households in this country do celebrate Christmas. Even Pakistani households they've sort of incorporated the whole gift giving.
Yeah.
Kids want what their pals at school are getting. So we're now trying to step away from the Christianity part of that and calling it the holidays like they do in America. Or
Yeah, I don't agree with that stuff.
They're bullshit and not having the Christ part of Christmas. It's just this.
I mean, I'm not religious. I'm not religious at all. I'm an apatheist, which is something you don't often hear people saying when they describe themselves. Usually, you'll hear like I'm Christian or I'm agnostic or an atheist. No, I'm an apatheist in regards to, and what that means for anybody that isn't aware is it's same as apathy. I couldn't give a fuck if God exists or not. I don't give a fuck. However, that said, I acknowledge, right, and I know I associate with a few people who are like more like pagan in nature or pagan sort of sympathizers or whatever the fuck they are. I don't know. But my point is though that like I know a lot of people, I associate with a lot of people online who despise Christianity and all other theisms and whatnot. And I can see their point to a certain extent, but it can't be ignored, as far as I'm concerned anyway, that a lot of right and wrong or culture and whatnot can be traced back to the moralities that were presented in black and white from Christianity. And I'm not a Christian, by the way. As I said, it's just that's how I see it. What is right and what is wrong. A lot of this.
The law comes from the Bible.
Yeah. So, like in that regard, I think, and the fact is, this is another thing as well. Saying a side note, like you quite often hear people when they're like having a problem with like Muslim immigration, go, "This is a Christian nation." It's not anymore. Scotland most certainly is not a Christian nation anymore. Even like the census, albeit it was butchered, Christianity is declining astronomically. It's now largely an atheist nation, with Muslims on the increase, with Christianity on the decline.
What's not helping that is the fact that Christian leaders are trying to vote swing and try to get people in the door by pretending to support LGBT.
Oh, like Christianity has become totally fucking subverted, the same way that the SNP have subverted nationalism. Like, there's no difference in that regard.
If they became a haven and advocated for the policies and the values of Christianity, they would probably get an influx of people who are disillusioned right now. They'd probably get, because it would be a place people could go and they would have a protected view and they could have somebody advocate on their behalf. Instead, they're like, oh, we welcome LGBT gay trannies to come in here and fiddle with kids. Because of course that's what Christ wanted.
Yeah, but this goes back to what we were on about like near the start of the stream when it comes to Tory voters. The vast majority of people that go to fucking church are all boomers anyway. There's not like a plethora of like mid-20s, mid-30-year-olds going to church weekly. It's just not the reality.
In America, it's a big movement.
Yeah, maybe in America, but even that's somewhat on the decline to a certain extent. But like, it's not a thing here. It's just old people. Okay, more power to them. But the reality of the matter is Christianity as a sort of concept, or it has become totally subverted to such a point that I actually feel sorry for like Christians who interpret the Bible. Like one of my good friends, Scout Summer, he interprets the Bible in a very, very different way to like your proverbial guy who goes to church and sings Kumbaya holding hands with like a black Muslim. Like, no. Like,
the Bible states that there should be borders.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I know all this stuff. Like, it's not going to make me believe or give a shit about God. But my point is, though, that like I feel sorry for these people who genuinely are trying to like say, listen, like we're not all fucking dickheads, by the way. But when you've got people like the Pope you know, like kissing the feet of immigrants and demanding or begging, pleading for, you know, mass migration and what. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Then you've got priests and whatnot, like transgender priests, and you've got like the Church of Scotland a couple of months ago. I posted it on Telegram, and they were talking about how the Bible, apparently they've interpreted it a specific way, deliberately so. The Bible actually advocates for mass migration. I mean, it's like, what? Like, no, it doesn't. It explicitly states the polar opposite to this, but like, it's just totally usurped. It's just bullshit. And I feel so sorry for legitimate Christians out there who do not agree with the absolute cancer that has manifested itself as mainstream Christianity. It's just, I feel sorry for them. I really feel sorry for
A lot
them.
of these old people that attend churches will be sitting there going, what the fuck's happened to my church?
Yeah.
Like, I've been to various different churches over the last couple of years with my kids' performances because they play music. And the politicization of things like Ukraine or climate justice and all this sort of shit. Like,
fuck it. Climate justice.
the people who are in charge of these places think they're doing the right thing, because that's the thing about these policies. They give the people who are spouting them a feel good because they feel good that they're doing something. And the kids that are bringing these things, the activist children, think that they're going to enact a change in their future or their country by pursuing what they're being told by their geography teachers and their history teachers and all these social science teachers. Oh, these things are bad. These are the things that you want to be pursuing. People think they're actually doing something positive when they're actually working against their own interests. The majority of kids now are going to be overlooked for university places in favour of migrant kids. They're going to be overlooked when it comes to waiting lists. They're going to be overlooked when it comes to housing applications. All these things that they should, in theory, be able to achieve in their own country, they're going to be put to the bottom of the queue because, oh, migrants' needs are higher, or that migrant needs medical attention more than you because they've come from a third world country. Everything is geared towards these people who've paid fuck all in our system to reap as much as they can get. And if somebody's paying for you to get as much as you can fill your boots, why wouldn't you come here?
No, I don't blame these people.
Why would you not come here if you can get a house, you can get medical treatment, you can get your kids fucking educated, you can get some money from gullible fucking charities that want to hand you cash?
You can see that's another thing, actually. You touched upon something there. And it's, you often hear like lefty politicians going like, stop scapegoating migrants. Nobody's scapegoating. There might be some people that are doing that, but the vast majority of people are not scapegoating migrants. They're simply pointing out the problems that are occurring as a result of mass migration. Nobody's blaming these people for coming over here. I would do the fucking same if I was born in a Manhattan, Kenya. Of course I would. When you've got the likes of Maggie Chapman and Angela Rayner and I don't know, John Swinney, the nationalist Scottish guru. Oh, come to me, and you can be Scottish. Of course, I'm going to do that. Why wouldn't I? Why waste my life away trying to initiate rain dances when I can live in Scotland in a hotel and eye up white women? Why wouldn't I do that? Right? Nobody is blaming these people for that. It's such a fucking cop out. Like, oh, stop scapegoating the migrants. Nobody's scapegoating about, but the reality of the matter is. They're coming here because they're invited here. There's a red carpet treatment and whatnot. It's even the same as like the bullshit with the boats and that. Oh, they're risking their lives with people smugglers. I know how to stop the smuggling gang. It's a really big brained idea, by the way. I don't know if you're prepared for this. I hope you're sitting down. Are you sitting down?
I don't know.
No, you need to sit down for this because you're going to be blown away with my hypothesis here. Okay, so this is going to involve something really fucking intrinsic sophistication unparalleled. Nobody's ever thought about this before. Send them fucking back. And just like that, the smuggling operation that they claim exists ceases to exist. Because if your name is Abdul and you've come from Syria or wherever the fuck else, and you've managed to traverse the European continent, and you're allegedly going to get your haircut first, of course, and spend a couple of grand on some new Adidas tracksuits and whatnot, and a new iPhone. Then you're going to part with the remainder of your cash to a smuggler who manages to sneak past all of the French Coast Guards and the French police, French authorities, let me finish with a speedboat. Nobody catches these people. They just manage to sneak past everywhere with a fucking speedboat. Nobody sees them. Don't know where they get these speedboats from. Regardless, they must have a factory somewhere, but we can't talk about that anyway because if there was such a thing, then surely that would be shut down by now. But regardless, my point is though, you're not going to part with your cash to smugglers, for example, to traverse the English Channel if you're going to get sent back. The only reason that we're led to believe that they're parting with their cash, if we believe the smuggler bullshit, which I don't, by the way, but let's just pretend it exists. So the only reason people are parting with their cash to smugglers is because they know that the boat will be provided for them to go across the channel, then be picked up by the English Coast Guards. So I've got this great idea. Send them fucking back. And just like that, this massive cartel of smugglers, they've got no business anymore. Who's going to part with their cash when there's a high probability that you're going to get sent back?
I don't know if you can remember, but a few years ago, there was boatloads of fuckers appearing in Australia.
And
Australians were told, get them fucking back. But they are not getting in here, and they fucked them off.
Mm.
They don't have a problem in the same way we do because they didn't tolerate it.
No, that's what we should be doing now.
Their problem in Australia is that they've got a mass influx of Chinese people to the extent that it's becoming quite
prominent.
There's a huge change in the demographic, but when it comes to things like Afghan or Syria,
just getting the fuck.
It's fuck all. They don't have that problem.
Good. That's what we should all be doing. And we'll finish this little seg.
But given that you have to go through a lot of hoops to get there, first of all, you have to secure independence, then you have to get the EU to agree for you to become part of the EU. I think you want something slightly shorter term. I mean, that could be 10 years or something.
But my point is that there's a couple of big issues in this election campaign that really aren't seeing the light of day. And one of them is the disastrous impact of Brexit on the United Kingdom economy.
And you are, of course, free to offer that opinion, but that is not actually the question you're being asked. So could you answer that question, which is specifically what will the SNP do to boost growth in manufacturing? That's your question, isn't it?
If I look at one of the things that we're taking forward in Scotland today, we've got what's called a Tech Scaler programme, which is designed to take new emerging companies that have emerged from our universities and in partnerships with business to essentially support them and to fuel the growth of those individual companies. And what that's about doing is taking new, fresh, dynamic ideas, the ideas of the future. There are things that are happening today in Scotland. We've got a facility up in Shetland, which is now going to start launching satellites by rocket into space. Now, if you'd said to me a few years ago, Scotland will be a satellite launching country, I would have said, okay, that's quite a big ask, but it'll be interesting if it happens. It's now happening. So innovation that comes from our universities can be fueled with public investment. And that's what the Scottish Government is doing to support that activity, to strengthen the manufacturing base of Scotland and to strengthen the economic opportunities that we face.
Does that answer your question?
Not really, because the time scale to me is a bit like the rockets going up to space. It seems to me.
Well, that's happening. Well, that's happening now.
Yeah, but you can take one example in one situation, but at the end of the day, we all know how much we all paid in time and money from a Brexit perspective. So talking about going back into that situation for the manufacturing sector is just not helpful. People will take a sharp and take a
I'll take another question. Thank you. Thank you for your point, because there's lots of
Could we, Jonah?
here in the chat.
I mean, I really think this is one of the most non-exciting talking points of Scottish history in the last few years, if you will. Oh, we're getting a space station. Fucking great.
We're going to fire rockets at the sky.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I know a few boys that are working over in Shetland, like doing groundworks and whatnot for the space station, and like more power to them. They're getting a lot of money for doing it, etc. You know, it puts people in a job and whatnot. But the reality of the matter is this: where like the vast majority of people in this country have to decide amongst themselves whether or not they fill their car up all the way or halfway, or exactly. And it's like, but we've got money to piss away in a fucking space station. What relevancy is this? What is this? This is the equivalent of giving India foreign aid so they can build space stations and whatnot. What is the fucking point? What, are we going to be an economic powerhouse of space? Are we? Well, like, and achieve what exactly? What? Nothing, absolutely fucking nothing. It's really one of those. You can maybe make that argument, I guess. Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's just one of those things where it's status. Look at me. Oh, look at me. Yeah, pretty much. Look at me. We've got a fucking space station. Oh, wow, wow, wee, wah, as Borat would say. Wow, I'm going to sleep so much better now. I can't wait for when I've got like wee tiny grandchildren. And then I go, I remember when I was your age and Scotland was just talking about having a space station. But now we've got a space station. Oh, wow, I can't wait.
Good evening, John. As a long-term supporter of both your party and independence, you've just said 2 minutes ago you want to give us the confidence to vote for you. How can you convince me that you can lead a successful independent nation after it appears the party has destroyed itself from the top down, not from the bottom up?
Independent nation. Again, I'm sorry. Shut up, John, you fucking bald dick. Again, independent nation. Where's the pushback? Where's Fiona Bruce going? In the EU, of course, you know, which would mean you would be independent. No, there's none of that. Like, people are just, there's like this tiny little narrative, you know, and you're not allowed to like exit said narrative. You're not allowed to come at it from a different angle. You have to stay within the parameters of said narrative. And the narrative is independence, independent nation within the European Union. But you don't even need to mention the European Union part in order to sort of win over additional voters and whatnot. The guy just said, how would you be able to manage an independent nation? That's not what the guy's trying to fucking advocate for, though, is it? It's not what the SNP are advocating for. This is my point. They're effectively screaming, begging, seething, squealing for the bureaucrats in the European Union to say to them, remember the leave the light on shit? Do you remember that? Oh my God. Remember that bollocks where the SNP tried to claim that the EU had put that Scotland loves Europe shite on the side of their building. Look what Europe have done for us. Then it transpired that the SNP had set the whole fucking thing up themselves. But my point is, though, like, but like, it was so funny. Like, they tried to say that the European Union had done this, and then it transpired that they did it themselves. Probably. But like, it's so cringe. It's like, it's almost like a future slave begging to be enslaved. It's like, please, daddy bureaucrats, enslave me. I lubricate my cheeks for you. I can't wait to be independent.
Done. So since we came to office, for example, GDP per capita in Scotland, the growth of the economy has been faster in Scotland than in the rest of the United Kingdom. Productivity in the Scottish economy has grown faster under the SNP government than it has in the rest of the United Kingdom. I said a moment ago the measures were taken to tackle child poverty, which is keeping 100,000 children out of poverty in Scotland today.
To be honest, I'm not even entirely sure if it's fucking any, like,
of
I need to look into this claim, man.
Delivering the best
100,000 children out of poverty. Keep hearing them fucking repeating it.
There's a whole range of decisions that have been made in Scotland that are good for Scotland, and that's an illustration of what an independent country could do if we had the powers, the broader range of powers, because I accept We need to improve economic performance in
Because
Scotland. We need to
Yeah.
eradicate poverty, child
That
poverty
will
within
do.
our society. And we can only do that if we have the broader range of powers. And we've demonstrated with the limited powers that we've got how we can make a difference.
Well, on that point, let's hear a question
Wait,
from
wait,
Tina
wait,
in
wait.
Greens.
Sorry,
Keep your
sorry.
hands up if you want to ask, because I will come to you later. But Tina, whereabouts are you? There you go.
If no more funding comes through from Westminster, how will you fix it?
Into context.
COVID and the necessity of trying to catch up from Westminster, which is affected by the same austerity and spending constraints that are there if we hadn't taken those decisions. Now, that's an example of how we're using the powers that we have today to try to address the very issue that you fairly put to me about the challenges in the National Health Service.
Shut up,
It's
John.
clear, because there's just not enough money proposed to be. Well, my answer
Got
to
the
that
money for Ukraine, no? Oh shit! I fucking went too far there. Look at me.
Next week.
Wait. Oh shit!
what that we're undertaking, and also part of to stress the point of the.
He's going to stress point.
If we use oil as an example.
Oh, oil, boy!
If, for example, question is
He's like one of the most uncharismatic leaders I think the SNP have had in their last. Well, I was going to say it in their history, but like,
He's been a leader.
yeah, he's been a leader before, but he's such a fucking planker. I mean.
Did you ever see that video with Richard Lucas where they were talking about
Yeah, the sex ed thing, yeah.
and he refused to mention it because
Why
they
is
were
your
live streaming on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can broadcast that and
in
Yeah,
Scotland.
yeah, this prick. Here we go.
In a much wider sense. So I think it's incumbent on political leaders, and particularly on me as the First Minister of Scotland, to do all that I can to try to bring people together by respectful, courteous debate, and that's how I go about my business.
Man in the blue shirt.
Hi there. So in 2016, Scotland voted as a majority to remain in the EU.
Looks like
Surely
Lewis Capaldi.
that means that if it's the Scottish people's will to remain in the EU, that we should be allowed another referendum.
Tell me he doesn't
on,
know
say,
Capaldi
freedom
with
of
if
movement,
it's
the
talking
customs
to
union, or even if it is the road to rejoining the EU independence, because that Scotland wants to remain part of the EU.
I love this shit. Oh, did it? Oh, yes.
Now, I'm clear that if Scotland does indeed face that prospect of being taken out of Europe against our will, then that option is on the table. But to be clear, that situation only arises if Scotland votes Remain next week.
No, just when you hear that shit again, this fucking twat sitting there again, another example of somebody who has just parroting a narrative that is completely and utterly factually incorrect. And the only reason that it has any credence and any credibility is because it's built upon the narrative that has permeated across society, and dare I say it yet again, unchallenged bullshit. Oh, in 2016, we voted this way because we want to be in the EU. Why did they do that, though? Why did so many people fucking vote that way? Was it because everybody in Scotland wants to be part of the European Union? Or was it because a good portion of people that did vote that way were told that that was the only way that they could have a referendum and independence at a later date? I don't know. The jury's out on that one. But the difference between me and these fucking people who associate themselves with the SNP is they assume absolutely every single person who voted to remain in the European Union did so because they want to remain in the European Union and spread those butt cheeks for bureaucrat booby. Whereas I hold my hands up and say, I don't know how many people voted which way and what way. But some most certainly voted because they were told to. Referendum. So again, that's why I played that clip of Nicola Sturgeon there. Oh, they emphatically voted to stay in the EU. But like, does that see my point here? Like, I played that clip. I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's so fucking annoying. It is so annoying how like nobody ever pulls these things up as like some sort of gotcha, I think it would make politics a lot more enjoyable to witness if somebody was like, well, how about this? And then like played the clip that I just played there of Nicola Sturgeon. Watch them squirm. You know?
That's what's wrong in politics now. There's no
Absolutely.
accountability. There's no accountability
Absolutely.
at all.
I'm just gonna go and get my tobacco, but feel free. Like, I'll leave you a wee tiny question to ramble on about before you play that. You voted, to leave, the UK in 2014. You also voted to leave the EU in 2016. So did a third of the SNP's voters, by the way. So did 1 million plus people in Scotland, on paper, vote the same way. I just can't for the life of me understand how these people, these fucking brainlets, think that voting to remain within the European Union is somehow patriotic and nationalistic. That's fucking arguably worse than Tommy Robinson and Meyer fucking Crusade.
Voting to remain part of the EU because you want a trading bloc, whilst at the same point decrying colonialism when we had an empire that we could trade with fucking freely as we wanted. We had the entire globe. They said the sun never set in the British Empire. We could trade anywhere in the world. And now we can suck cock to trade.
Undermining our economy and our public services in Scotland. And the sooner we can get back into the European Union, in my view, the better.
Therefore, not independence. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we're going for like fucking 2+ hours now. So, I'm going to make a wee rollie before we fuck off. If anybody's got any questions for us for the last fucking maybe like 5 minutes or whatever, then feel free. If not, then I'm not going to cry about it. To be honest, well, I might, but I'm not going to do it on stream because my name's not John Swinney. So
You could, and we could ask for donations.
Yes. Oh, you fill my cup. Anybody got anything to ask? If you want, my big brain intellectual powerhouse mechanisms, I can always find a way to answer the hard-hitting questions. I don't know. Honest fucker.
I can't wait till this whole shit is over and done with. I'm sick
Same,
of elections.
But as I said at the start of the stream, I think the SNP are going to lose some seats, and hopefully that'll shut them up temporarily. But the problem then that you've got is the fact that then fucking SNP will play on any failures of Labour in the upcoming Scottish elections. So it's not really anything to celebrate about, in all honesty. But a temporary bit of a reprieve, granted, fair enough. But in terms of longevity, it's yeah. Yes. What's this? Have you seen any dog? No. Not yet. Anyway, no. They're just basically doing the pipes and whatnot. So they're getting good money for it, though. You know what I mean? And I'm like fucking nearly $1,000 a week, yeah.
Do you know the thing that bothers me about this upcoming election?
What?
The last time we had a general election was just before the COVID narrative took place. It was in 2019, December of 2019.
Aye, aye, aye.
We voted, and the Tory government as a whole, the country voted for that. That legitimised everything that happened after they were voted in. We're going to be voting for a new parliament in Westminster when at this point we know that they're going to be pushing for 15-minute cities, and they're going to be pushing to ramp up climate nonsense, the LGBT thing, and the migration. We know what they have in their deck of cards to play.
Yeah.
And if we vote Labour, which the majority of people are probably going to vote because they're scunnered with the Tory government of the last, 17? I don't even know when the Tories got voted in. 17 years ago, 16 years ago? Can't remember how long they've been in power, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's overdue a change in government simply on the fact of averages. We're going to vote in Keir Starmer, and we're going to be absolutely fucked because they're going to say, well, you voted for this, you voted for us, and you knew full well we wanted to pursue the climate policies, the LGBT policies, the globalist policies that are driving all of the parties. Now, it doesn't even matter at this point whether the Tories get voted back in
No.
or whether Labour gets voted back in.
Yeah.
It makes no difference because the policies that are going to be implemented are across the board, and it's Lib Dem, Labour, Tory, the Greens. In fact, the Greens are probably the most, what's the word?
Honest.
Militant. They're probably the most
Honest.
militant. Aye, they're honest about their goals, but it doesn't matter which party gets that fucking majority vote. We're getting globalism whether we want it or not.
What about that question now?
Which one?
One of I love.
Who do you think is worth voting for? What's the solution? I don't think the solution that I think can be reiterated in a public stream. To be honest, I think people need to get seriously fucking sick of what's going on. And I think people need to become more active in their local communities as well as in their wider communities. They need to start showing their unhappiness. And I don't think that voting is going to get that registered because we're only allowed to vote for people who are going to implement the same things as all the other people in the ballot box at this stage. If we could vote our way out, I would say vote for the guys that are voting against the UN, because in all of this, the United Nations are the driving force of the majority of what's been played out, and it's been, as was it Nicola Sturgeon herself in that video who said, for the greater good?
Yeah.
For the greater good, we need to uphold the United Nations policies and whatever. The greater good is going to be the downfall of mankind. We need to start looking for local solutions, and we need to start looking after our own people. I'm not giving a fuck about the poor sob stories of Omar and Tamar and fucking Abdul and all these other people. They don't mean anything to us. We need our country to be concentrating on the poor people that are born here, that have got no escape, no second nationality. They've got nobody advocating for them because other parties in their country are advocating for foreigners over them. We need people to be angry at the politicians. And what I would like to see happen, I can't repeat, but I don't think there is a peaceful solution at this point. I think people need to become more disillusioned. I think more people need to see what's happening. And the majority of the normie people that go and vote and they think that the wee X in the box is going to make a difference, they're the same fuckers sat voting Uber Eats and welcoming the fact that they can get a an Uber Eats within half an hour of ordering it on whatever app they use while sat watching Netflix and simultaneously watching God knows what on the internet. Because that's people have been conditioned to just consume things mindlessly without having to think long term what the implications of these things are, and whether it's something as benign as a Chinese delivery. That used to be a Scottish guy or an English guy who would make a few extra quid every night, taking his car out, filling it up with fuel and getting tips, getting paid by the Chinese to deliver meals. And now that's some immigrant on a bike who doesn't have insurances to pay. Everything he makes is profit. He's living in a hotel, rent free. And people don't seem to give a shit because they're getting their takeaway and they can watch their Netflix. It's disgusting that people have just sort of advocated for consumerism over community spirit. People have become consumers, and I've said this many times to yourself about kids learning the history of their town and where they grew up. If kids feel a tie and they feel pride in where they come from, they're more likely to want to see it do well. And the majority of people nowadays don't really know that much about where they actually live. They don't have that same level of pride, and they don't seem to want to keep the town alive in the same way that maybe their forefathers did.
Yeah. I mean, I'm usually very pessimistic when it comes to political solutions and whatnot, but what I will say is in terms of solutions, I think, and it's something I've done this on my channel for fucking years anyway, and it wasn't like I set out to do what I have ended up doing for the longest time, but I've like spent a good portion of my spare time like highlighting a lot of the cancer that's going on within our parliament. Quite often I don't even need to include my own commentary and whatnot, but more to the point, to your specific question about solutions. To be honest, I genuinely think that there is a desire in Scotland. I don't know if you're Scottish, by the way, bud, but if you are, right, I think this is probably more relatable to Scottish people. There's a lot of people in this country who have been completely hoodwinked by this BS, which we've kind of taken the piss out of a bit tonight regarding independence / European Union membership. And I really do feel that what people should be doing if they're able to do so, and it's not exactly the most difficult of things to do, is to really hammer home the point that what the SNP and even the ALBA party are advocating for, it's not independence, nor are they nationalists at all. They're absolutely not nationalists. And I think that if we were to be able to sort of wake up some of these people to make them realize that what the SNP claim, or what the SNP are presented as being, or what the SNP claim to stand for versus the reality, I think if you were able to sort of smash that sort of fucking, you know, that barrier and make people realize that you're not independent in the European Union. I mean, again, it's like, it's self-explanatory. Like, I don't understand why some people think the way that they do. But as some of the clips that we've shown tonight, people in the audience, whether you can argue they're plants or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people who genuinely share this belief system where they think that, you know, we will be independent in the European Union and everything will be great and dandy and whatnot. They're not nationalists for a start. They have subverted a nationalist movement or a nationalistic sentiment that, you know, exists in Scotland. That's undeniable. They've subverted a nationalist sentiment, and they've simultaneously subverted a nationalist movement. they're LARPing as nationalists in order to achieve their end goal, which is to be part of the European Union by hook or by crook. Whether that is the United Kingdom being part of the EU again, or whether that is Scotland itself being part of the EU, that's what they're after. So whenever they start to parrot their fucking narratives, people just need to present all of the things that either I've included simultaneously, periodically through the stream, or any other things that you can find in one. Even their white paper. Their white paper makes references, like the 2014 white paper makes multiple references to the EU, but in the context of they acknowledged themselves we weren't going to be part of the EU. Like it's just ridiculous. So that's my, I guess, my solution in that regard. You just need to keep chipping away at this narrative that is being solidified over the years, because there's absolutely no pushback from politicians, nor is there any pushback from the mainstream media and whatnot. It's just the SNP's narrative versus the rest of the world. And I think that if we can sort of continue to chip away at that, you know, you might be on a winner there, in all honesty, because there is nationalistic sentiment out there. It's just been subverted. And that's probably the most optimistic thing you're ever going to hear out of me in regards to a political solution, because I genuinely do think there's a lot of people out there who are just misled to a certain extent. So, yeah. As for voting and whatnot, it's entirely up to each and every individual whether or not they want to go and vote. Personally, I don't vote. I voted twice in my life. I voted for independence in 2014. I voted for leaving the European Union in 2016. And I've made no bones about my affiliation. If I was to be held at gunpoint and I had to identify as something, yeah, I'm a Scottish nationalist, like a proper Scottish nationalist. But this is the problem. Fucking name me 5 other people like me. You can't. Because so many people who are classified as Scottish nationalists are all about my European Union. No. It's just fucking ridiculous. It's just retarded. You know? Scotland for the Scots. Self-explanatory again. But quite frankly as well, I don't even think we should be talking about independence. You know? Somebody who sympathizes with the old school cause, the grassroots movements, and the grassroots beliefs of an independent Scotland. There's too much shit going on across the United Kingdom, too much shit going on in an international context, and too much shit going on in Europe, etc., for us to even be discussing these issues. But the problem that we have, and has been a persistent problem for fucking years in this country, is the SNP's narrative versus the rest of the world. But yeah. And on that note, I like that. Fuck the EU. Yes, I agree. Great sentiments. Sorry, wait. Fuck off. Got the like-minded people under one banner. But see, even that, you've got your all under one banner movement in Scotland, right? Which is supposedly, in theory, people from all different stripes and from all different political persuasions who all share one common goal, which is Scottish independence. But when you watch any of their marches, or if you attend any of their protests and their demonstrations, you will see quite clearly, and you will hear quite clearly as they begin to speak one after the other, that the vast majority of them have the same mindset as the people who are presented as the Scottish Nationalist Party members, which is, of course, independence in the European Union. It's not nationalism. It's fucking ridiculous, to be honest. For the best part of 17 years, but ever more so since 2014 onwards, political conversation in Scotland has been dictated by division and a waste of time. Division in the sense that the country's been split down the middle to a certain extent regarding unionism versus independence. And on top of that, a waste of time in the sense that it's just every election cycle, vote for the nationalists so we can get independence. Then they don't get independence. They know they're not going to get independence, but they continue to do so anyway. And as the country just continues to decline, overall implode. Aye. But yeah, anyway, rambled on for too long now. I very much appreciate everybody that's tagged along and whatnot. And on that note, me and my missus will bid you a good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. And till next time.
Good night.
Adios. Yes, join the European Union for Scottish nationalism.